Chapter 1 Alabaster. Hey Air, what are you doing? Let's go out and play together. Come here, come here. I just fell asleep. A little black-haired boy who looked to be 7 or 8 years old yawned, rubbed his sleepy eyes, and got up from the ground. Air tilde, we obviously agreed to hang out together. Why are you still sleeping in? A little blue-haired Lily put her hands on her hips and asked angrily. Vivi, please forgive me. I spent a whole day shopping with you yesterday, and my legs are still a little weak. Air said helplessly. The little Lolita, also known as Vivi, took Air's arm and pulled him while walking and said, okay, you are a boy, isn't it natural to go shopping with a girl? Who says this is natural? See if I don't beat him to death. He followed the little girl helplessly and left the palace. Air looked up at the sky in pain. Air is not from this world. He was originally a good boy from the 21st century. It was only when the toilet exploded that he was sent to this world. When he first arrived, he was just a baby learning to talk. After a period of adaptation, he realized that he had arrived in the world of pirates. Now her full name is Neferutari Air, and she is a branch of the royal family of the desert kingdom Alabasta. His mother died after giving birth to him, and his father died in an accident to protect the current king Cobra. As a child, he was admitted to the palace and raised by Cobra. The little girl in front of her is the princess of the kingdom, her distant sister Neferutari Vivi, who is 2 years younger than herself. Reluctantly being dragged all the way from the palace to the street, Vivi skillfully summoned the friends around her. She stood on a big rock and said to the children underneath, kids, let's continue exploring the ruins today. Perhaps because of Air's intervention, Vivi didn't know Kosa at all. Instead, I grew up playing nearby with her and met a group of friends. With Air's support, Vivi became the leader of this small group, leading a large group of people around for fun every day. After deciding on the target, everyone set off in a mighty manner. Sighing, looking at Vivi, who looked like a big sister, leading the way, Air followed helplessly. Just as he turned around, a very conspicuous small tree that could move on its own caught his attention. He twitched the corner of his mouth and walked over. I said, Karen, your disguise is too fake. Xiaozu shook his head but did not respond. Shaking his head, Air ignored him and left. Okay, just keep following. With her blonde curly hair combed out, Karen huddled behind a tree, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and breathed a sigh of relief. It was so dangerous, I was almost discovered. Thinking about it, he stood on tiptoes, held up the small tree, and continued to follow. The group of people came to the ruins and began to imitate the protagonist in the story in search for treasures in every corner. Under Vivi's pressure, Air also found a passage and wandered inside. Why do I have to play these house games with these little brats? Really, I don't even have time to practice properly. While walking, Air suddenly stopped, turned his head dully, and looked at the fruit lying quietly on the ground with a gaudy appearance. He was dumbfounded. He ran over quickly, held the fruit in his hands and looked at it carefully. You can't be wrong. This is definitely a devil fruit. Takes off ~. Holding the fruit in his arms excitedly, Air ran out of the ruins. I found Vivi, who was still playing house with her younger brothers, and said excitedly, Vivi, come on, let's go home. I found something amazing. Vivi, who was digging around in the rubble, ran over excitedly after hearing this and asked excitedly, Nanny, Air, have you found the treasure? 100 times more precious than treasure. Without any time to explain, Air pulled her and rushed towards the palace quickly. Being pulled, Vivi looked back at her younger brothers and shouted loudly, everyone, I'm going back first, and I'll come back to play with you tomorrow. The children had questions on their faces, wondering why the elder Yamato suddenly ran away. Unable to figure it out, they didn't care about anything else and continued to play happily. The two ran back to the palace in a hurry. When they saw a patrolling guard, Air hurriedly stopped him. Your Highness Air, Your Highness Vivi, do you need any help? Looking at the panting two, the guard asked dutifully. After taking a few breaths, Air asked eagerly, where is His Majesty the King now? I have something urgent to look for him. Hearing that there was an emergency, the guard quickly said, Your Majesty is handling government affairs in the study. If necessary. Before he could finish speaking, Air, who learned where Cobra was, left in a hurry. Scratching his head, the guard stopped thinking and continued his patrol mission. In the study, Cobra was handling the affairs of the kingdom as usual, when he suddenly heard a noise at the door. Your Highness, His Majesty the King is handling government affairs and you cannot go in now. Your Highness, get out of the way. I'm in a hurry. Bang. The door was forcefully opened, and Air and Vivi, breathing heavily, appeared in front of Cobra. Chapter 2 Devil Fruit. Before Cobra could ask, Air hurried forward, raised the devil fruit in his hand above his head, and said excitedly, Uncle, look, I found a devil fruit. Cobra thought something had happened. Wasn't it just a devil fruit? A devil fruit! Nanny. Cobra took the fruit and stared in disbelief. Yes, I picked it up accidentally when I was out playing with Vivi just now. Uncle, don't we have a devil fruit illustrated book? Take it out and compare it to see which fruit it is. Picked up? Cobra looked at Air with a snotty expression on his face. He never thought that this kid would be so lucky that he could pick up such things anywhere. He coughed twice and maintained his image as a king. Cobra walked to the bookcase seriously, rummaged through it and took out a devil fruit illustrated book. He handed the illustrated book and the fruit to Air and said, "You can find it yourself." After that, Cobra drove the two away. Air took the book and left happily. As soon as the two left, Cobra quickly lay down and searched every corner of the study carefully. "Damn it, why don't I have such good luck?" Woo 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 tilde apostrophe. In the corridor, looking at Air walking and bouncing, Vivi, who had been silent, finally couldn't help it and asked curiously, "Air, what is devil fruit?" Looking back at the lovely Vivi, Air pinched her little face with one hand and said happily, "Devil fruit is a secret treasure in the sea. After eating it, you can gain all kinds of strange abilities." So Air taught her about the 3 types of zone, Paramecia, and Logia and their magic. After listening to the introduction, Vivi's eyes lit up and she couldn't wait to urge the rant. "Hey, it's amazing. Let's quickly see what kind of fruit this is." "Well, let's go back to the bedroom." After making up their minds, the two quickly went to the bedroom. Because they were still young, they had always slept together. Air took off his shoes, sat cross-legged on the bed, opened the devil fruit illustrated book and flipped through the pages. The fruit looks like a bear, with a fire cloud pattern on the outside. If Air hadn't seen the animation, he would have thought it was Meramera fruit. Candy? Not like it. Sickle fruit? Totally different. Hot fruit? It doesn't look like it either. Apostrophe. My eyes are dazzled. I can't find it at all. After searching for a long time, Air couldn't find anything exactly like this fruit. Just when he gave up and took the fruit to take a gamble, Vivi, who was sitting nearby, turned the book to the last page and exclaimed, "Air, I found it." "Where is it?" Air turned over and returned to his original position. He and Vivi stared at the illustrated book and compared it with the fruit in their hands. The top is small and the bottom is big. The same. The whole body is fiery red. The same. The pattern like fire cloud. Is still the same. "That's it!" Exclamation mark. You tilde found it. The two hugged each other happily and cheered. After celebrating, Vivi urged, "Air, look at what the fruit can do." "Let's see." "Just the name." Zone, dragon fruit, phantom beast species. Fire dragon fruit. Nanny. 2. Vivi covered her mouth and before she could make a sound, 2 screams came from the door. Then King Cobra and the guard Captain Icahn kicked open the door and rushed in. "Really? Air, give me the illustrated book." When they came to the bedside and grabbed the illustrated book, Cobra and Icahn compared it carefully. After confirming for a long time, the two suddenly cheered, hugged each other and jumped up and down in celebration. "Phantom beast species, phantom beast species, a phantom beast species that is rarer than Logia tilde. It's great." Vivi pouted and looked at the two people who were so happy and forgetful, and said dissatisfiedly, "Dad, Icahn, you won't be eavesdropping outside all the time tilde." The two people who were jumping around froze for a moment, looking at Vivi who was staring at them angrily and didn't know how to explain. It was Air who was considerate and comforted. "Vivi, don't be angry, Uncle and Icahn just care about us." Cobra and Icahn nodded repeatedly with flattering smiles, agreeing with Air's statement. "It's just that the way you care is a bit pervert. Hateful. You stinky brat." Apostrophe. The two looked at Air angrily, cursing in their hearts. Vivi's little face turned even darker. She clenched her fists and looked at the two of them with a look of horror. "Really tilde?" The two of them were so frightened that they broke into a cold sweat and quickly said all kinds of nice things to comfort her. It took a long time to calm down Vivi who almost exploded. Cobra wiped the sweat from his forehead, coughed lightly, regained his serious expression, and said to Air, "Since you discovered the fruit, you should deal with it. No matter what you want to do, you must consider the consequences. Do you understand?" Air nodded firmly, knowing what would happen in the future. He had already made a decision. "For myself, for Vivi, for Alabaster." Air picked up the dragon fruit and took a big bite. "Well!" Exclamation mark. His eyes widened, and an indescribable taste filled his mouth. He scratched his throat and fell to the bed in pain. The sudden change frightened Vivi. She quickly supported Air and asked anxiously, Air, what's wrong with you?" Air stretched out his hand tremblingly and struggled to squeeze out one word, "Water." Chapter 3 Experimenting with Fruit Ability. Icahn quickly poured a glass of water and handed it to him. Air drank it in 2 gulps, then let out a breath. "This stuff tastes worse than shit." "Really? Air has even eaten shit?" "It's really amazing," Cobra said nonchalantly while holding his nose. Air immediately looked at him with a fierce look and roared, "Absolutely not." Seeing the interaction between the two, Vivi and Icahn couldn't help laughing. For Air, who had lived in the palace since childhood, Cobra not only felt guilty that his father died for him, but also had a deep father-son love born from being together for a long time. Now that this kid has eaten such a rare devil fruit, it's time for him to make some arrangements for his future. Looking at Air playing with Vivi, Cobra asked, "Air, do you feel anything?" "Feeling? I don't seem to feel anything." Air clenched his fists and made a confused sound. "Maybe you haven't gotten used to it yet." "Come on, let's go outside and experiment. Air, who was very excited about his abilities, nodded and agreed. Along with Vivi and Ikaru, who were also curious, the four of them came to the school grounds where the king's soldiers usually exercise. Air walked to the center of the school field and suddenly struck a strange pose. Looking at Air, who was tied up and his mouth was wide open, Cobra asked expectantly, "What's wrong? Is the ability about to be activated?" "Wait a minute, something seems to be coming out." Air's face suddenly turned red, and a hot energy began to gather in his throat. "It's now." Air opened his mouth, and a stream of blazing fire burst out from his mouth. A small flame from a baby's fist appeared out of thin air, burned for a few seconds and then disappeared. The venue suddenly fell silent. The three cobras looked at Air, who remained motionless, and burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha, is this your ability? It's pretty good for circus performances." "Ha ha ha, Air is like an idiot." "Ahem, don't be discouraged, Your Highness Air. PFF, I'm sorry, I just can't help it anymore." "Ha ha ha." The three of them held their stomachs and rolled back and forth on the ground laughing. Air, whose face was as red as an apple, wanted to find a hole to crawl into in shame and anger. Hearing the ridicule of the three people, he roared angrily, "What's so funny? I'm just not proficient. When I get proficient, I will be able to spit out huge flames." Cobra smiled and wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes, pretending to give a thumbs up. "I believe you, Mr. Clown." After saying that, the three of them laughed again and kept beating the ground. "Damn it, just wait. I will practice hard from today on and impress you all." Ignoring the three people who laughed at him, Air calmly called out, "System, open the personal panel." Ding tilde. Nefertari D. Air. Sex, male. Age, 8. See Circle Calendar 1510 this year. Height, 126. Personal abilities, Constitution E, 251 500, Swordsmanship E, 237 500, Physical Skills E, 231 500. Devil Fruit, Dragon Fruit F, 2/100. Overall rating, E+, Rookie. Yes, this is Air's cheat, which he suddenly started 6 months ago when he turned 8 years old. The function is very simple. As long as you keep practicing, you can increase your experience. For example, doing 10 push-ups, running 500 meters will add a little physical experience, and swinging a knife 10 times will add a little sword experience. Relying on the heaven-defying ability of the system, Air mastered physical skills and swordsmanship to E level in just half a year. You must know that E level swordsmanship is equivalent to the level of ordinary people practicing swordsmanship for 10 years in the system's evaluation, which is already considered good at this age. If Ikaru and the kingdom's two patron saints, Bel and Gaka, hadn't claimed that they could protect the two highnesses and not allow him to practice, he would have already cultivated his abilities to D level. Thinking of Air, he made up his mind that from today on, no matter what the reason is, he must work hard to practice. Start with the fruit. Air took a deep breath and followed his instinct to use the zone fruit's signature skill, beast form. Transformation. His whole body began to change. His arms and legs stretched out and he lay on the ground, and his body was gradually covered with fiery red scales. A strong tail also emerged from the back of the butt, making a huge wind-breaking sound as it swayed from side to side. A big bump bulged out from the back, which suddenly turned into broad wings, inciting a fierce wind to roar. A ferocious and mighty western fire dragon appeared in the school grounds and let out a powerful dragon roar. Cobra and Ikaru stared at the fire dragon in front of them in stunned silence, and couldn't help shouting, "Hey, it's too small." That's right, Air is now only over 2 meters long including its tail, and its wings are only over 3 meters wide. Not only does it look unintimidating, but it looks very cute. Okay, so handsome. Vivi's eyes lit up as she watched Air transform into a little dragon and pounced on him. Wow, it's a tail. It also has wings. Air, can you fly? Can I sit on it? You fly. Seeing Vivi sitting on his back, Air opened his mouth and roared excitedly, "I didn't agree. Get off my back. Besides, I can't fly." Cheapskate. Vivi puffed her face and got off Air angrily. Really, the book is about to take off. Chapter 4 Conqueror's Haki. After the others were far away, Air cheered, flapped his wings desperately and prepared to take off. A strong wind blew by, causing dust on the ground to fly all over the sky. Air's limbs gradually broke away from the ground and flew to 7 or 8 meters above the ground. Success. I can fly. Air's dragon face showed an excited look, but unfortunately it didn't make him happy for long before he felt weak and fell down suddenly. Bang! Air fell to the ground like a green onion. The entire dragon was stunned and his brain shut down. When the 3 people watching from a distance saw this, they quickly ran over to check on his injuries. "Your Highness Air, are you okay?" Ikaru carefully held up the faucet and asked anxiously. Air moved, opened his eyes and comforted. I'm fine, I was just shocked." Cobra and Vivi also ran over and breathed a sigh of relief when they heard this. Air struggled for a few times, then broke away from Ikaru's arms and returned to his human form. "I'm fine. The advantage of the zone fruit is its strong recovery power. It's just that after a few minutes, I feel like nothing is wrong with me. Cobra nodded and said matter-of-factly, yes, this is Zone's characteristic. Not to mention that you are also a rare phantom beast type user. Air clenched his fists, feeling the energy in his body that seemed to be endless, and said excitedly, great, this way I can have more physical strength to practice. Hearing his words, Cobra looked at him meaningfully and asked, Air, I noticed that you suddenly started practicing hard since half a year ago. Can you tell me why? Air's smile faded. He looked at the expressionless Cobra, and said firmly, in order to have stronger power to protect my beloved. After a pause, he added, Dad. He was killed by pirates. I hope that facing the same predicament, I will have enough strength to protect my family, friends and the entire Alabaster. Air's tone was firm, his voice getting louder and louder, and the last sentence was shouted out directly. After getting along with each other for such a long time, he has long regarded Vivi, Cobra, Ikarin, Belle, Jaco and others as his family, friends, and the most precious treasures in his life. As soon as the words fell, an invisible aura rose up and swept around. Cobra and the other three were directly swept by this aura. Immediately, the young Vivi and Ikarin's head sank and they fainted. This is Conqueror's Haki. This kid Air. Cobra managed to hold on, looking at Air with a look of horror on his face, and beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. Air also noticed something was wrong, and looked at Vivi and Ikarin, who suddenly fell to the ground, and ran over anxiously. Vivi, Ikarin, what's wrong with you? That feeling just now ... Could it be? Yes, it's Conqueror's Haki. I didn't expect a kid like you to even know this. Cobra still looked surprised. What happened today was beyond his imagination. First there was Devil Fruit, a super rare species of phantom beast, and then there was Conqueror's Haki who suddenly awakened. It is simply unimaginable that these two appear in one person at the same time. It seems that there is another incredible guy in the Neferutari family. Staring deeply at Air, Cobra couldn't help but think, hey, this is not the time to think about this. Vivi, my lovely Vivi, how are you? Air, you bastard, let's see how I teach you a lesson. Hey, wait, Uncle Cobra. Your Majesty. No. There was a lot of excitement in the school grounds, and Air, who was covered in bruises, reluctantly dragged Ikarin back to the palace. After handing him over to the servants in the palace to take him back to rest, he went to Cobra's study alone. Is Ikarin settled? I asked my servant to take him to rest. Well, come and sit. I have something to tell you. Air obediently came to the chair in front of the desk and sat down. He looked at Cobra who was sitting across from him, wondering what he wanted to say. Putting his chin on his hands, Cobra looked at Air carefully. The same black hair and eyes, the same handsome appearance. Looking at Air, he couldn't help but think of his brother, Air's father. Air, do you know? You and your father are exactly the same when they were young. When I look at you, I think of us sneaking out of the palace together in childhood, recruiting younger brothers together, spying on women together. Well, I didn't mention this. Anyway, it was a wonderful memory. At the same time, I still remember the last words I said to your father before he left. He asked me to take good care of you and let me say sorry to you. He couldn't watch you grow up. As he spoke, Cobra's eyes couldn't help but be filled with tears. I originally wanted you to grow up healthy and carefree. I don't ask you to achieve much, as long as you are happy. Air lowered his head. He didn't have much affection for his father in this life, but he was still very grateful to him. He brought him a good life, allowed him to grow up safely, and gave him a new family. Cobra looked at the silent Air, sighed, and said seriously, but after you awakened Conquerors today, I have new ideas, so I want to ask your opinion. Air, do you want to go to Naval Headquarters? Chapter 5 Marine. Air raised his head in surprise and looked at Cobra, not understanding what he meant. Seemingly guessing the doubts in Air's heart, Cobra continued, the world is too big, and all kinds of crises can appear at any time. If you want to gain real power, you can only go to Naval Headquarters and undergo rigorous training to unleash your power. Qualifications to become a truly strong person. Marine. Air lowered his head and thought deeply. He had thought about it before he came to this world. In the future, Alabaster will be coveted by Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Without Luffy's protagonist Tora, if you want to defeat him, you must at least have a good armament Haki. Otherwise, you can't even touch him. So how can you defeat him? Although Alabaster is a big country with a long heritage, there are no masters who can use Haki. So he also thought about whether to join a certain force. Among them, Marine is his first target. Indeed, there are a lot of scum in Marine, but those are only a minority after all, and Marine is generally a decent person. Moreover, Alabaster is one of the countries that joins the world government, and he is a member of the royal family, so he can't join some pirates. Thinking of this, Air raised his head and looked at Cobra, and said firmly, I want to go to the Marine headquarters. I want to become strong. Have you decided? Then go back and rest first, and spend more time with Vivi these days. After leaving this time, I don't know how long it will take for you to see each other again. After Cobra said this expressionlessly, he let Air leave. He sighed after watching Air exit the room and close the door. Picking up the photo on the table, It showed two young people holding hands and smiling. I don't know if this decision is good or bad for Air. Cobra rubbed the photo and thought sadly. After Air on the other side returned to the bedroom, he looked at Vivi sleeping soundly on the bed and couldn't help but reach out and stroke her little head. As if feeling Air's breath, Vivi smiled happily while sleeping. I have to leave. I really can't bear to leave. Air sat quietly on the bedside, looking at Vivi, who had been inseparable since birth, getting along day and night, and fell into a daze alone. In the next few days, Air gave up all practice and played with Vivi everywhere every day, meeting her various requests. We spent a good time happily until one evening, a warship came to Alabasta. Today, the entire palace was extremely lively. In order to welcome the guests, Cobra specially ordered people to prepare sumptuous dishes. I never expected that you would come in person, Cobra said in surprise when he saw the visitor. Ah. Don't worry, I'm just here for a visit. A particularly muscular man said nonchalantly while pressing his nose. The person who came was none other than Garp. At this time, his hair had not turned completely white as it would have been 10 years later, and he still looked relatively young. But his bastard character hasn't changed at all. Standing aside, Air, who also came to receive the reception, thought to himself. Garp seemed to notice him, turned around and said evilly, "What's that look in your eyes, kid? Are you thinking of something bad?" Seeing Garp raise his fist as big as a sandbag, Air shed a drop of cold sweat. He waved his hands repeatedly and changed the subject. No, Vice Admiral Garp must be hungry after traveling for so long. Let's go get something to eat first. Something. After hearing this, Garp immediately shifted his attention, touched his stomach and said impatiently, "That's right. My stomach is growling, so I'd better eat quickly." Seeing this, Cobra quickly led Garp and his party into the banquet hall and began to make arrangements for the dinner. When the food arrived, Garp picked up the plate and took one bite at a time, swirling the food in his mouth like crazy. Everyone in the palace, including Air, was stunned. Adjutant Bogart and other Marines who were also invited looked at Garp's unfazed expression and couldn't help but lower their heads, pretending not to see him. Only the youngest Vivi smiled and clapped her hands and said happily, "This big grandpa is so awesome, he can stuff so many things in his mouth." At this time, she still didn't know the purpose of Garp and others' visit, and was still enjoying the food happily. After being praised by Vivi, Garp became even more excited. After swallowing the food, he smiled and said to her, "Hey, since you're so complimentary, let me show you my unique skills." After speaking, Garp used his super-fast hand speed to quickly take away the food in front of several people nearby and stuff all of it into his mouth. Air was holding a table knife, and when he saw his favorite food, he was about to take action, but his eyes flashed, and the food disappeared. Glancing at the old man Garp sitting next to him, devouring his food, Air reluctantly swallowed his breath and turned his attention to another plate of food. But before he could do anything, the plate of food disappeared again. I can't bear it. Change the target and prepare to take action. Few gone. I can't bear it any longer. Change the target. Few gone again. Air's hands creaked when he squeezed them. He slammed the table, pointed at Garp angrily and roared, "Damn old man, did you do this on purpose?" Chapter 6. Let's go. Garp closed his eyes and fell asleep. "Smelly old man, don't pretend to be asleep here," Air shouted in collapse. Bang. The snot bubbles popped. Garp woke up, looked at Air strangely, and continued eating as if nothing had happened. Covering his heart, Air was so angry that he fell off the chair and made an unknown sound from his mouth. "Hey, Your Highness Air, are you okay, Your Highness?" "Call the doctor." Several guards couldn't help but exclaimed when they saw Air falling to the ground. Air got up from the ground with difficulty and said, I'm fine." "Arsehole old man, considering your age, I won't argue with you." Air sat back on the chair, picked up the tableware again, and said to Garp beside him. Garp looked at him doubtfully and said, "Are you talking to me?" "Bastard old man, I will kill you." Air jumped up from the chair and rushed towards Garp. "Juang." Garp blew his fist, retracted his hand, and continued to cook. Air held his head in his hands and collapsed on the ground in pain. "Ah, it hurts." Ha. Air is an idiot. A burst of laughter sounded from not far away. Who else but Vivi? In response to the little girl's ridicule, Air, who was covering his head with a big bump, was unable to refute. At this time, he vowed viciously in his heart that he would give this old man a lesson if he had the opportunity in the future. The dinner ended with laughter and joy. Apart from not being full and having a big bulge on his head, Air was very satisfied. After the banquet ended, and Garp and others went to rest under Iker's arrangement, Cobra took Air and Vivi back to the bedroom. After closing the door, Cobra told Vivi that Air was going to Naval headquarters. After hearing this, Vivi threw herself into Air's arms with tears in her eyes and cried, "Air, I don't want you to leave. I will never make you angry again. Please don't leave, okay Tilda?" Air patted her back and comforted her softly. "Don't cry. It's not like I won't come back. Just be obedient at home and I will be back soon." But Vivi still didn't listen and huddled in his arms and kept crying. Air held her shoulders, looked directly into her eyes, and assured her, Believe me, I will definitely come back in 3 or 4 years at most. Let's hook up. Vivi sniffed hard, looked at the smiling Air, stretched out her little finger and hooked up with him to make an agreement. Then she threw herself into Air's arms with tears and burst into tears. Seeing this, Cobra silently exited the room, leaving the space for the brother and sister. In the corridor outside the room, Garp leaned against the wall with his arms crossed and asked Cobra, "It's okay to wait until he's older. Why are you so anxious to send him to the headquarters?" Wiping the tears from the corners of his eyes, Cobra waited until his mood stabilized and then said, "This child's heart is no longer here. As he gets older, I find that he is becoming more and more anxious, as if there is something behind him. Chase him, especially after he gained that power in the past 2 days. I became more determined in my thoughts." Garp fell silent and did not ask what the power was referring to. After waiting for a while, he turned and left directly. He returned to his previous careless demeanor, waved and said, "Forget it, I'm only responsible for bringing him back to the headquarters. Someone in the recruiting camp will handle the specific matters." Cobra stood at the door for a while and then left. Only Vivi, who was still crying, and Air, who kept comforting her, were left in the room. Early the next morning, Garp's warship docked in the Santa Dora River near the capital Albanese. Vivi, Cobra and his party came to see Air off with reluctance. "Air, you must call me more. I will miss you." Vivi's eyes were red from crying, and she hugged Air and said reluctantly. Cobra grabbed Vivi and comforted her. "Don't worry, brother will be back soon." After that, he looked at Air and told her, "Pay more attention to your health and be careful with everything." Air looked at the 2 relatives he cared about most, holding back tears, and waved goodbye to them. "Don't worry, Uncle Cobra, Vivi, maybe next time I come back, I will become a famous big shot." After saying that, he turned around and boarded the warship. Vivi, Ikarin, Belle, Jaka and others stood in the distance looking at his back and secretly wiping tears. Garp stood on the deck with his nose in his hands, smiled at Air who was walking onto the warship, and asked, "Kid, why don't you say a few more words?" Air shook his head. "No need, I will come back sooner or later, and I will return as a Marine General." After saying that, he puffed up his chest proudly. Looking at this kid, Garp laughed out loud. "General Marine? Ha ha ha, it's up to you, kid. Let's start as a miscellaneous soldier first." "Nanny." "Miscellaneous soldier?" Air shouted in disbelief with his eyes bulging. Garp ignored it and ordered Bogart, who was following behind him silently, "Bogart, let's go back to Marineford." Chapter 7 Naval Headquarters. In the first half of the Grand Line, in the vast sea, a huge dog-headed warship was galloping in the sea. On the deck, a boy who looked to be 7 or 8 years old, wearing the clothes of a Marine soldier, was cleaning the deck with a mop. "Damn Garp, it's okay if you don't teach me how to practice. You just ask me to do some chores. How can I become stronger if this continues?" The boy, who was Air, grumbled quietly as he dragged his feet. "It has been 10 days since I left Alabasta." During these 10 days, Air not only received no guidance from Garp, but various chores affected his practice. While he was cursing, Garp appeared behind him at some point. "Kid, if you have time to complain, you might as well work hard." After saying that, he punched him. "Come again. Watch me jump horizontally." Boom. Air tried to dodge based on experience, but was still hit by Garp's iron fist. If you want to avoid the iron fist of my love, you are still 10,000 years away, kid." Air covered his head and raised his head with difficulty, gritted his teeth and said fiercely, "Smelly old man, you, just wait for me, I will definitely beat you up." "Huh?" Garp's eyes narrowed. Seeing that he dared to retort, he raised his fist and shouted, "You haven't seen the situation clearly yet, kid. Look at my favorite 3-hit combo." Boom, boom, boom. Air fell to the ground against the 4-story exquisite pagoda, completely losing his fighting power. Garp crossed his arms and was very satisfied with his work. Just when he wanted to educate this kid, the lookout hand of the warship saved Air's life. "Vice Admiral Garp, the warship is about to arrive at the headquarters." "Are we here?" Garp looked away, walked to the bow of the ship, and looked at the busy dock ahead with a bright smile. Air got up at some point, came to his side, and looked into the distance. "I saw a small island with a circular pier, and a huge fortress with the word Marine on it appeared in front of me." "Okay, it's so big." "This is Naval Headquarters, Marineford." Air opened his mouth in surprise. Although he had seen anime in his previous life and knew how grand Naval Headquarters was, seeing it with his own eyes was a different experience. "Haha, what do you think, kid?" "This headquarters is spectacular." Garp's words were filled with pride. Although she agreed with what he said, Air just couldn't stand him and retorted, "It's just so-so, barely eye-catching." Boom. "You duplicitous brat. Stop talking such nonsense." With another heavy punch, the bag on Air's head successfully evolved from the 4th level to the 5th level. While Air was squatting on the ground with his head in his arms, the warship had already entered the dock. Following the command of the shore personnel, the warship gradually stopped. Seeing that it was the ship of Marine hero Garp, A group of soldiers hurriedly lined up in 2 rows to welcome his return. Garp carried the incapacitated heir like a little chicken and walked off the warship. Stand at attention and salute. Welcome back Vice Admiral Garp, an officer shouted loudly. The other soldiers raised their hands in unison and saluted, and the scene was very spectacular. Air struggled to escape from Garp's hands. He followed Garp and looked at the well-dressed soldiers. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It is indeed naval headquarters. The discipline and momentum of the soldiers cannot be compared to the soldiers of the branch. After receiving the news that Garp was back, a colonel ran over, glanced at Air who was looking around behind Garp, and saluted. Vice Admiral Garp, Marshal Garp wants you to go to his office immediately. After picking his nose and flicking it, Garp smiled and patted the colonel on the shoulder and said, I know, I'll leave this brat to you. Take him to report to the recruiting training camp. Glancing at the hand on his shoulder that had just clasped nose, the colonel saluted and responded loudly, Yes, Vice Admiral Garp. Air stared blankly at Garp who had left him alone and gradually walked away. He kept scolding him for being unreliable. It wasn't until the colonel called him that he came back to his senses. Boy, follow me, I'll take you to the recruit training camp. Seeing him come to his senses, the colonel finished his words, turned around and left, and Air had no choice but to follow him quickly. The two of them walked around in circles and finally came to an independent camp. The colonel took him directly through the door into an office on the first floor of the building. A young woman, Marine, was immersed in writing something when she heard footsteps and raised her head. Seeing that the person coming was the colonel, she quickly stood up and saluted. Mr. Colonel, what are your orders? The colonel stepped aside and revealed Air, who was originally blocked by him. He pointed at him and said to the female Marine, This guy is a recruit here to report. Please write down his information. After saying that, the colonel turned around to leave. Before leaving, he turned back and added one sentence. By the way, this guy was brought by Vice Admiral Garp. Vice Admiral Garp. The female Marine was startled and quickly looked at the little guy in front of her. Air looks harmless and even cute, which makes the female Marine wonder about his relationship with Garp. However, due to the principle of confidentiality, she still did not ask questions. Instead, he sat back in his chair, took out a form and said, Little brother, this form is for you. You sit over there and fill it out. Chapter 8 Recruit Training Camp. Thank you, sister. Air replied sensibly, then took the form and walked to another table to read it. Name, gender, age, place of birth. It's very simple. After a quick glance, Air picked up the pen and started writing. It was completed in a short time. Sister, I've filled it out. Air obediently handed the form to her, and the female Marine took it and read it carefully. Hey, he's only 8 years old. The minimum enlistment age for Marine is 12 years old. How can you? The female Marine exclaimed in disbelief. But then I thought about it. Since this little brother was brought by Vice Admiral Garp, he certainly had his intentions, and I, a small clerk, should not worry about it so much. Thinking of this, the female Marine had no worries, stamped the form, and carefully collected it. After finishing, the female Marine stood up and walked around the table, took Air's little hand and said to him, Little brother, other recruits have already started training. Sister will take you over now. Air showed a sweet smile and said obediently, Thank you, sister. Looking at his cute look, the female Marine felt as if she had been shot in the heart. She happily led Air out of the office building and headed to the training ground. After a while, the two came to an open space and saw a group of young children lining up neatly, being lectured by a ferocious-looking officer. The female Marine trotted over and saluted. Major Kanku, a recruit has just arrived. Air also quickly saluted with a decent military salute and said loudly, Major Kanku, recruit Air, come and report. Looking at the short Air, Kanku stared at him with ferocious eyes and said in a bad tone, Boy, Marine is not a place to play house. It's still too late to quit now before I regret it. Air did not flinch, stared at him without showing any signs of weakness, and said firmly, I will not quit. I want to be a Marine Admiral man. Phew, someone in the team couldn't help laughing. Even a little kid dared to say something about Admiral without shame. After squinting his eyes and looking around, Kanku snorted and asked Air to return to the team. After he found a seat and stood up, Kanku began to lecture. Since you have become a Marine, you must shoulder the responsibility of protecting civilians. The pirates who are as numerous as ants on the sea are your enemies. If you want to survive, you must train relentlessly. Now, everyone, run 20 laps around the playground. After the words fell, the group of people turned around in an orderly manner and began to run around the playground. Not to be outdone, Air started running with the team. Kanku followed everyone and kept scolding them. What's the use of running so slowly? Speed up. Everyone quickly speeded up and strode forward with all their strength. But after all, they were only 12 or 3-year-old children. After running 7 laps at full speed, many people still couldn't hold on and fell behind the team. Why, this won't work. At this level, I advise you to go home and drink milk. Otherwise, you will lose your life while performing tasks in the future. Kanku's taunt had an effect. The few people behind the team gritted their teeth and squeezed out the last bit of energy, and slowly followed the team, but that was all. On the 11th lap, 1/3 of the people were thrown away and fell to the end of the group, panting and half dead. A few of the people with poor physical condition even lay on the ground motionless. Kanku didn't show any mercy for this, he just kept urging everyone to speed up and not stop. After 20 laps, almost everyone fell to the ground out of breath and exhaustion, and it was difficult to even move a finger. Only Air felt very tired, but with the blessing of the fruit, he still stood still and waited for Kanku's order. Kanku stared at Air standing upright, feeling very surprised. If it were any other person, Kanku would only think that he has good physical strength. Only Air, this young-looking guy, surprised him. But it was just a bit of a surprise, not enough to make Kanku look at him differently. Boy, since you still have the energy, just run a few more laps. You can stop when I tell you to stop. Do you understand? Yes, Air answered loudly, turned around and continued running. Some people in the crowd exclaimed softly, being frightened by Kanku's cruelty. So, the recruits began to rest and gloat while watching the unlucky guy running circles around the playground. Air ran hard regardless of anything else and quickly completed 10 laps. The recruits nearby were shocked from ear to ear. What is even more unacceptable is that Air is still full of energy and continues to work hard. 20 laps, 30 laps, 40 laps. It wasn't until lap 47 that Air felt exhausted, but he still gritted his teeth and persisted, wanting to see where his limit was. 50 laps, 60 laps, 63 laps. With a plop, Air could no longer hold on and fell to the ground. As he took a big breath, Air felt that his entire lungs were burning, as if they were about to emit fire. Then, his mouth really burst into flames. He was still breathing fire uncontrollably, frightening everyone onlookers. This is! Chapter 9 The Future Marine Admiral. Kanku looked at the flames in Air's mouth in surprise, and the first thing that came to his mind was the Logia fruit. Then I remembered what Ed just said. This kid might actually have the potential to become an admiral. After calming down, Kanku stepped forward to check on Air's condition. Boy, put away your fruit power. Are you showing off your power? The selfless Kanku glanced at him briefly, and after seeing that he was fine, he said coldly. Air tried to stand up with trembling hands, but failed several times. Kanku knew that this was the boy's limit, so he waved to the female marine who was eating melon not far away and never left to come over. When the female marine trotted up, Kanku scolded Air, "Go back to the dormitory, kid. You still want to be a marine admiral like this? But you still have 100 years to go." The female marine couldn't bear to look at Air, who collapsed on the ground, and reached out to help him up and sent him to rest. Air refused her help, and stood up from the ground little by little, looked directly into Kanku's eyes, and said stubbornly, "Uncle, don't underestimate me. I am the future Marine Admiral." An invisible aura swept through the surroundings. The female marine closest to him was the first to be affected, and she suddenly lost consciousness and fainted. The recruits around him did the same thing. They fainted and fell to the ground one by one. Kanku's eyes widened when he faced him, and a drop of cold sweat ran down his forehead. "No, it's impossible. How can a kid this age have such aura?" At the same time, in Marshal Sengoku's office, Sengoku, Garp, and Crane were chatting together casually. "Garp, you bastard. You actually ran back to East Blue. Do you know how chaotic New World has been recently? As the top combat force of Marine, running around every day, don't you know how to relieve me of some pressure?" Sengoku's roar echoed throughout the office. Garp, who had his own way, didn't listen at all. Instead, he asked Sengoku with a smile, "Haha, Sengoku, don't say such hurtful words. Take out your senbai quickly. I haven't eaten it in a long time." Looking at the shameless Garp, Marine Chief of Staff Vice Admiral drank tea as usual and pretended not to see anything. Sengoku, on the other hand, was completely beaten. Just when he wanted to scold Garp, the three of them looked up at the direction of the recruiting training camp. "This feeling is Conqueror's," Sengoku said with a solemn expression. Grandma he drank tea and said calmly, "That direction is the dormitory area and the recruit training camp. It seems that Marine has new blood with extraordinary potential." Feeling this breath, Garp laughed and patted the table. I guessed who it is." The two of them turned their gazes towards him, waiting for his explanation. "Do you still remember the boy you asked me to bring back from Alabasta?" Cobra told me at that time that this boy had awakened some kind of power, and now it seems that he is Conqueror's. "Alabasta? Neferutari's family?" Sengoku muttered a few words softly, and then asked Garp for Air's detailed information. Garp also slowly expressed his views on Air. Not only Sengoku, many powerful generals in the headquarters felt Conqueror's aura, and they were all curious about which colleague had such qualifications. Looking back at the training camp, Kanku was completely shocked and couldn't help but swallowed as he looked at the fallen recruits. Lowering his military cap to cover his face, Kanku turned around and said in a barely calm voice, "Boy, look at the good things you did. Today's training was interrupted because of you. I now order you to continue training until they are all awake!" "Yes, instructor." Relying on the powerful recovery power of the fire dragon fruit, Air regained some strength. After hearing Kanku's order, He obediently started doing push-ups and waited for the recruits to wake up. Kanku ignored him and walked towards an office in the recruiting training camp. Dong 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 tilde. Come in. Kanku walked into the office and reported loudly, reporting to the chief instructor, "A new person with great potential has been added to my team. I would like to ask you for his next instructions." The chief instructor in Kanku's mouth was leaning against the window looking at the boy below who was working out hard on the playground. He has purple hair, glasses, and his eyes are full of determination. With a height of more than 3 meters and strong muscles, it is simply exaggerated and scary. He is the former Admiral of Headquarters and current Marine School instructor Black Calm Zephyr. Zephyr silently looked at Air's hard-working figure with admiration in his eyes, but did not respond to Kanku immediately. The office was quiet for a long time before he suddenly said, "Tell that boy to report to the elite training camp tomorrow." "Nani? Let him go to the elite training camp directly? Isn't this too fast? Should we let him practice in the recruiting camp for a few more days?" Kanku is not questioning Zephyr's decision. He simply feels that Ed just arrived today and will enter the elite class tomorrow, which will make him develop a proud and arrogant character. "Trust my judgment, Kanku. This kid will definitely give me a surprise." Chapter 10 Elite Class. Air had been training for more than 2 hours before the recruits woke up one after another. They looked at their companions around them blankly, not knowing what had just happened. At this time, Kanku came back. After he ordered everyone to line up again, he began to lecture. "Kids, look at your performance today. It's simply ridiculous. As Marines, you all fainted during training, which totally embarrassed Marines. Now everyone is ready. Let's start the 10,000 meter long run." The recruits accepted the order with a confused look on their faces, and only when they turned round and were about to run away did everyone react. "No. 10,000 meters. People will die." "Kanku instructor, did you say it wrong? It should be 1,000 meters." "Yeah, how could we run 10,000 meters?" "Instructor, you made a mistake." "No." The recruits all agreed. In their eyes, 10,000 meters is an impossible task. Kanku's face dropped, and he looked at the noisy recruit. He said in a cold voice, 15,000 meters. "Just say another 5,000 meters." Now the recruits didn't dare to speak. Seeing that they couldn't resist, they could only run reluctantly. At this time, Kanku said again, "Air, there is no need to participate. Your dormitory has been arranged. Go back and have a good rest. Report to the elite training camp tomorrow." Air, who was at the end of the team, was stunned, quickly reacted, and after replying loudly, left the crowd and walked towards the dormitory building on the side. The recruits looked at Air's leaving figure with envy and jealousy, wondering why Kanku gave this boy special treatment. "What are you looking at? Why don't you run quickly? Those who haven't finished running today can't have dinner. Do you hear me?" Everyone wailed and dragged their tired bodies to start training. Air inquired about it, and after finding his room, he just took a quick glance and left. Although he was allowed to rest, he had no intention of being lazy. Instead, he found a veteran and borrowed a wooden sword to start practicing swordsmanship. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There was nothing fancy, just the most basic chopping. Air practiced it boringly, and stopped after waving his hands 500 times when it became too much. "How comfortable. This is the training I'm looking forward to. No one will disturb me, no one will stop me, and I will watch myself getting stronger bit by bit." Air lay on his back. Although his body was tired, his heart was very happy. After practicing for so long, take a look at my personal panel, system. Ding tilde. Nefertari D. Air. Sex, male. Age, 8. Personal ability, Constitution D, 3/1000ths. P.S. This is pure physique. The bonus of Devil Fruit is not included. Swordsmanship E, 287,500. Physical skill E, 313,500. Devil Fruit, Dragon Fruit F, 7/100ths. Overall evaluation, E+. Still a noob. Damn it, after practicing for a long time, I finally got my physique to D. But your 1000 experience points are too much. Brother system, let's discuss how to change it to 700. Ding. This system believes that no matter how difficult the training is, host will persevere. Please keep up the good work. FKU, my system gives you fruits and Haki, you just let Laozi practice. Tell me what's the use of you. Ding. Host, the most terrifying thing in this world is not working hard, but working hard but not seeing any reward. But you are different. As long as you practice diligently, no matter what the bottleneck is or how difficult it is, as long as you get started and receive the blessing of the system and your own efforts, you will continue to become stronger and never-ending until new system functions are enabled. Listening to the system's deception, Air was silent for a while, silently got up, continued to hold the wooden sword and started practicing. The system tells the truth. No matter where you are, there is no shortage of hard-working people, but often they have their limits. After reaching a certain level, even if they work hard, they can only be left behind by real geniuses or wall-mounted people, unable to see their backs. Xiaoli in Hokage is the best example. He almost defeated Gaara with his early explosion and said, I am a genius who works hard. Apostrophe the person who said this. In the later stage of the decisive battle, we can only open 6 doors to make soy sauce on the side. He is helpless against an enemy like Otsutsuki. At least I still have system support. In time, I can become a strong man with a reputation in the sea. There's nothing to complain about. Apostrophe. After drinking a large bowl of chicken soup, Air worked harder and began to practice desperately. In the evening, when the recruits from the same class came back, they were shocked by Air, who was sweating profusely and his clothes and pants were all wet. With everyone looking at the monster, Air had dinner with the team, then went to bed early to rest, looking forward to the next day of the elite training camp. Because he was transferred to the elite training camp, he could temporarily stay in a small single room tonight, so he slept peacefully. At 5 o'clock in the morning the next day, Air washed up early, had breakfast in the 24-hour cafeteria, and walked towards the elite training camp. The elite class and the ordinary class are actually not far apart. They are both in the same station, but they are blocked by a high wall in the middle. Air just walked around in a circle and walked for about 10 minutes to the place where the elite class was training. The same open space, but much larger than the ordinary class. Originally, he thought he had woken up early enough, but he didn't expect that there were already 2 students starting training in the open space. Chapter 11. Meeting Zephyr for the first time. A strange-looking man with long pink hair noticed Air walking towards him, stopped training and walked over to ask curiously, "Hey, little brother, are you a member of Marine's family? Why did you come here alone? Do you need my brother to take you back?" The man had no ill intentions and just wanted to help the little boy in front of him, but his coaxing words made Air very uncomfortable. "This brother, I am Air, who has just been transferred to the elite camp. Thank you for your kindness. Please give me your advice in the future." Although Air really wanted to call him uncle, for the sake of his good intentions, he might as well forgive him. The man responded humbly when he heard this. "Oh, I'm new here. Please give me some advice in the future." "What, a ghost? Are you kidding me? A kid as young as you can get into the elite class? When did the standards of the elite class get so low?" His roar attracted the attention of another girl, who came over, stood in front of Air and scolded the man. "Pins, what are you doing? Don't bully the children." After saying that, she turned around and bent down to touch Air's head, comforting her with gentle words. "Don't be afraid, little brother. This brother is not a bad person." Although the girl in front of him was very cute, Air still slapped her hand away in shame and repeated what he had just said. Now both of them were dumbfounded. They looked at each other, not knowing what to do. It was Ain who spoke first and broke the deadlock. "Sorry, we misunderstood you. I'm Ain, and the person who spoke to you before was Bins. From now on, we will be companions. Let's work hard together." In fact, Air recognized them at a glance without her introduction. Both of them were characters who appeared in animations in their previous lives. Among them, Ain has long dark blue hair, a gentle personality, and is the one with the ability to regress the fruit. Bins, who has pink hair and a somewhat out-of-the-box personality, is a user with the ability to grow fruit. "My name is Air, nice to meet you." After saying that, Air stretched out his hand to shake hands with the 2 of them. Ain looked at Air's stretched out hand strangely and shook it funny. Bins enthusiastically asked about his origins and was very interested in him. When Air said that he had just arrived at Naval headquarters yesterday, both of them were surprised and looked at him suspiciously, wondering whether this little guy might be the child of a certain general who came in through the back door. It wasn't until Air said that he was a zone fruit user with a strong physique that the 2 of them nodded in understanding. While the 3 of them were talking, many more people came one after another. Air and others also stopped talking and began to practice individually. It wasn't until 6 a.m. that an instructor came. The person who came was none other than Marine instructor Zephyr. He glanced at the people lined up neatly with sharp eyes. When he saw Air, his eyes lingered for 2 more times before he shifted his gaze and spoke. "I am Zephyr, and I will be training you from today on." Now everyone turned to the left, and the 50-lap warm-up begins. The elite class is indeed an elite class. There was no complaint about the 50-lap run and they ran honestly. After 50 laps, most of the people were exhausted and panting. Only Ain, Bins, and Air still had some energy left to catch their breath. Zephyr didn't talk nonsense and went straight to the point. "Now I will demonstrate Marine's physical skills. Marine 6 styles. You all should watch it. The first is shaving. This is a move that involves stepping on the ground at high speed dozens of times in a split second, 0.36 seconds, generating explosive reaction force to move at high speed." After saying that, Zephyr's figure flashed, and when he reappeared, he was already 30 meters away. Then he kicked a few more times, walking on the air like stepping on stairs. Moonwalk, by stepping on the air with strong foot power, generates strong aerial force, which is an advanced application of shaving. Then he kicked his right leg violently, and a 6-meter-long sickle-shaped slash cut into the ground, leaving a long and narrow slash mark. Tempest Kick uses a super-fast and powerful kick to roll up a vacuum to create a slashing attack on the opponent, which can easily split the target in half. Zephyr quickly landed on the ground, ducked in front of a wooden dummy, stretched out his index finger and stabbed it quickly, leaving more than a dozen holes in the dummy like poking tofu. Finger pistol concentrates all the power of the whole body on the index finger, and uses the hardened finger to strike with lightning. The fingertip has the attack power of a bullet and can easily penetrate the human body. After the demonstration, Zephyr returned to the crowd and said, "I need someone to cooperate with the last two moves." He glanced at the crowd, pointed at Air and said, "Air out of the queue." Air was stunned for a moment, then ran forward eagerly, waiting for Zephyr's instructions. Seeing Air's expectant look, Zephyr raised the corners of his mouth slightly. "I hope you can still laugh later." Good. Attack me with all your strength. Looking at Zephyr's tall figure, Air took a deep breath, clenched his fists and attacked him. Chapter 12 Learn the 6 styles. At the moment Air attacked, Zephyr seemed to turn into a blank sheet of paper, swaying left and right to dodge his attacks one by one, and at the same time explained, "Paper arts, a defensive technique, removes the whole body's strength, and through the changes in airflow generated by the opponent's movements, the body can become as light and thin as paper, and the body can be controlled easily, and the attacks directed at oneself can be fatal." Get out of the way. Damn it, as expected of the original Admiral, I can't even touch him. In that case, let me show you all my strength. Air roared, and his body began to change. His fingers turned into claws, his legs became thicker, and his body was covered with a layer of scales. Human and animal forms, see above. Look at my crazy grabbing. Air said his name right out of 10, kicked off his legs and rushed forward quickly. Not Logia? Zephyr was a little surprised, but he quickly reacted and showed a cruel smile. Iron body. Miso tilde. After a sound of metal friction, Air fell to the ground with tears in his hands. "Ah. It hurts." Zephyr held his hands and explained to everyone, "Iron body injects strength into the rigorously trained body, accelerates blood flow, and speeds up muscle movement. It gives the body the hardness of iron, making it indestructible even to bullets and swords." Seeing Air falling to the ground in pain, everyone marveled and yearned for the 6 styles. At the same time, he was also shocked by the speed and power Air just showed. The 6 postures require strong physical fitness to master. You should try the ones you are interested in first. If you have any questions, you can ask me, Zephyr said, then found a shady corner and sat on a chair to rest. As soon as Zephyr left, Ain quickly came to Air, grabbed his hand and said distressedly, "Air, is your hand okay? Do you want to go to the infirmary?" Air had already exited the human-animal form. Feeling Ain's concern, he forced a smile and said, "It's okay. I am a zone ability user and I recover very quickly." Seeing him like this, Ain didn't force himself. After comforting him for a few words, he found a place to practice alone. After she left, Air stood up slowly, found an empty seat and started practicing. "I don't know if I can perform the 6 moves with my current physical fitness." Air thought as he posed for a shave. He kicked the ground hard and quickly with his toes, but unfortunately there was no reaction except that he fell down and ate shit. Air, who did not believe in evil, tried several times in succession, but had to give up the practice until his calf cramped. "Forget it, I have only practiced for a few days and I want to learn the 6 postures. Just keep exercising honestly." After comforting himself for a few words, Air started boring training again. Zephyr looked at Air who quickly changed his mentality and did not stick to the 6 moves, and nodded happily. After all, Air came too late. Most of the people in the elite class are old people who have been training in the ordinary class for 2 or 3 years. Their physical fitness has barely reached the 6 style standard and they can start trying to practice. As for Air, in Zephyr's view, although he has good potential, he has no foundation and poor physical condition, and it is still early for him to reach the 6th form. The reason why he was admitted to the elite class was just to hope that other people in the elite class could stimulate him and inspire him to work harder and practice harder. In this way, Air works hard every day to exercise and develop fruits. In his spare time, he chatted with Ain and Bins for advice. 3 months passed quickly. System, open my personal panel. Ding tilde. Nefertari D. Air. Sex, male. Age, 8. Height, 127. Personal abilities, Constitution D. 761 thousandths, Swordsmanship D. 241 thousandths, Physical Skill D. 155 1,000ths, Haki, Conqueror's Haki, 46 100ths, Skill Move, Shave E. 1/500, Devil Fruit, Dragon Fruit T. 26500. Overall Evaluation, D+, barely self-protective. That's right, after 3 months of hard training, Air finally mastered 1 move and 6 moves. Woo, it's not easy. I finally learned it. Air shed tears of joy and said happily while wiping away her tears. A month ago, he finally saw the words Shave D. 1/500 on the panel, and he could use it occasionally. After a month of hard training, he upgraded his shaver to level E and was able to use it fully. Next to him, Bins shed a drop of cold sweat and said speechlessly, Hey, Hey, you are really a monster. Many veterans haven't even learned a single move. Even I have only barely mastered the shaven finger pistol. Ain stood aside and smiled and congratulated. Your hard work is not in vain. I know you can do it. Ain didn't mean to brag, but she had seen Air's efforts in the past 3 months. Relying on the super recovery of the phantom beast species, Air starts at 5 a.m. every morning and goes to bed at 12 p.m., practicing like crazy and desperately, which scares Ain, Bins and others in the elite class. At first, some people were dissatisfied with the fact that Air was able to enter the elite class at such a young age and gossiped about him. But ever since they saw him practicing, everyone shut up and no longer gossiped. Instead, I was inspired by him and followed his crazy training every day, training myself to the point of being bruised and bruised. In the end, even Zephyr couldn't stand it anymore, so he stopped everyone and gave them a good scolding. There is no way, not everyone is a Phantom Beast type ability user. If you want to learn Air, your body must be able to handle it. Chapter 13 Student Competition. Thanks to book friends Uemenglao for the monthly ticket. The three of Air got up early in the morning and entered the cafeteria to have breakfast while chatting and laughing. While they were enjoying the food, a strange officer walked into the cafeteria and said to everyone, "The elite class will suspend training today to conserve energy. There will be a student competition at 8 o'clock in the morning. If you receive the news, remember to inform others." After speaking, the officer turned and left. The cafeteria was quiet for a moment, then became noisy. Ain poked Air, who kept swirling rice in his mouth, and said expectantly, "The college competition, I don't know what my score is." "Air, don't just eat, tell me what you think." Swirling the last plate of barbecue into his mouth, Air burped, rubbed his round belly and said, "Let's compete." "What can we say? Isn't it just to distinguish between high and low? After the competition, shouldn't we still do what we should do?" Seeing Air's indifferent look, Bins looked at him suspiciously and asked strangely, "Don't you know?" Air asked, "Know what?" Bins covered his face and looked defeated by you, and explained to him. The college competition is not just about rankings, but also a comprehensive score based on your performance and your potential. This determines our future graduation, military rank and treatment. Really, that's quite important. Air became somewhat interested. Of course, if you can be among the top 5 in your class, you can challenge the seniors from the previous classes. If you succeed in the challenge, you will get a lot of points, Ben said excitedly. But we are still newcomers who have just entered the elite camp, and we are still far behind the seniors who are like monsters. Air smiled and didn't take Bens's words to heart at all. After simply clearing away the dishes, Air waved to them and continued training. "With all the spare time I have, I might as well practice shaving a few more times to save the time when something goes wrong." Ain and Ain looked at his training back and sighed helplessly. The two of them are not like Air, who can recover their strength quickly, so they should wait patiently for the competition to begin. Time passed quickly, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, with a whistle, all the colleges started to set off and began to assemble. Air was carrying a Marine standard long knife on his back, standing in the team and curiously looking at the students around him, some of whom he had never seen before. This is normal. There are 6 grades in the elite class. Air and others are first-level students. After reaching the 5th grade, instructors will lead them to the 4 Cs, even hunt pirates in the first half of the Grand Line, or serve as leaders of a certain branch. Junior sergeant, unless necessary, they basically will not return to their home base. When Air glanced at the group of 6th-level students, a rebellious-looking man with white hair holding a cigar caught his attention. "No way. Why is Smoker here? Has he not graduated yet?" Seeing an acquaintance made Air excited and confused at the same time. If Smoker is here, then Hina won't be there too. Sure enough, under Air's search, Hina's figure came into view. Hina stood behind Smoker and was blocked by him. If it weren't for her dazzling pink hair, Air almost didn't notice her. Unfortunately, Smoker was blocking her so tightly that Air couldn't see Hina's face clearly, and couldn't help but cursed Smoker secretly in his heart. Smoker in the team seemed aware of it and turned his head to look in the direction of Air. "What? He's just a brat. Can Marine even take in such a young child now? What a depravity!" After looking at Smoker twice, he stopped paying attention because Zephyr had already arrived. Wearing the cloak of justice and crossing his chest, Zephyr walked to the high platform and said loudly, "The rules of this competition are very simple. Compete with each other among the same class. Use all your strength to defeat every opponent. The top 5 in the same class can challenge the seniors. The ordinary class can challenge the elite class. Now, everyone comes forward to draw number plates." Everyone remained silent and just went to the instructor of their grade one by one to draw numbers. Air quickly stepped forward to draw lots and returned to the team with a piece of paper numbered 12. The elite class has about 3 to 40 people in each class, plus the 200 or so people in the ordinary class. Everyone is divided into 10 stages, which is very fast in comparison. Air carefully observed the competition between grade 5 and 6 students and found that these seniors had mastered at least 2 or 3 types of 6 forms, and some even performed a complete set of 6 forms. At the same time, There are also several seniors who have fruit abilities, and one of them, Air, has some impressions. His name is Very Good, and he is a bin fruit user. You can transform your body into Dowder like an elemental form to evade your opponent's attacks. This is too shameless. Without a wide range of attacks or without learning armament Haki, he and Smoker, the Smoker, are basically invincible. Air thought about it in his heart, and couldn't help but envy the two of them. However, thinking that he was a rarer Phantom Beast type user, he felt balanced. Watch me punch each one in the later period and teach you how to behave. Please invite contestants number 11 and 12 to go to arena number 5 to start the competition. While Air was still in Yi, an instructor shouted, "It's my turn, Air, Pins, remember to cheer for me." After saying this to his two friends, Air jumped directly onto the ring. Chapter 14. The first opponent. Colony is a little transparent in the elite class, and his strength is not above or below the same level in the same class. When he learned that a student competition was going to be held today, he was secretly happy for a while. I plan to show my strength well on this stage and impress my classmates, especially. Colony glanced at Haynes secretly and giggled. Number 11. Number 11. Who is number 11? Come up. Instructor's urging interrupted his fantasy, and Colony quickly trotted onto the ring. Looking at the short Air in front of him, he felt a little contemptuous. Although the amount of training this kid does every day is indeed amazing, after all, the age gap between the two parties is too big. Moreover, some things cannot be made up for through hard work. Both players are ready. The competition begins. As soon as instructor finished speaking, Colony rushed over impatiently. Let me show you the results of my 3 months of hard training. Shave. Colony disappeared instantly and turned into an afterimage that attacked her. Then he rushed off the ring and fell to the ground so hard that he even lost 2 of his teeth. The scene was quiet for a moment, and bursts of laughter could be heard from the random crowd. The sound became louder and louder, and soon students from all grades were laughing together. Ha, is this Colony guy just trying to be funny? He fell down before the game even started. Ha, look, his teeth have fallen out. The current juniors are really interesting. Is shaving originally a funny move? Ha, HMPH. Since you're not proficient in the 6 moves, don't show off your skills. It's really embarrassing for our elite camp. Air also had black hair. When this guy used shaving, he was startled, thinking that this guy with no sense of presence was a master who knew that he was ready to defend himself. But this guy passed him by and fell down. Air looked at instructor, spread his hands towards him, and asked him what to do. Instructor gritted his teeth and looked at this idiot fiercely, scolding him 100 times in his heart. You know, he is the main person in charge of this class. Now the students he teaches have made such a big mistake in public. I wonder how they will be laughed at by their colleagues when they go back. Number 11. Failed. Go run 50,000 meters on the playground for me, and you won't be allowed to eat until you finish. Did you hear that? Instructor roared. Colony covered his face with his hands and ran away in shame. Air looked at his back and noticed with sharp eyes that there were crystal tears falling from his hands. Hey, isn't it? My mental ability to bear it is too poor. Isn't it social death? Isn't that what it is? Air sighed silently, walked to the edge of the ring, jumped down, and returned to the team. As soon as he stood up, Bins hooked his neck with a smile and said, "It seems that you are very lucky. You advanced to the next round without any effort. Keep at it, maybe you can make it into the top 5. Air did not open his hands, but folded his arms and said pretentiously, "What is luck?" This is obviously because my intimidation was too strong. I scared him so much that his legs became weak, and then he fell off the ring. Yes. Do you understand? Understand, did Terence Bin said teasingly, rubbing his head as he spoke. Slapping his big hand away, Air snorted and ignored him. Ain looked at the two playing around and showed a beautiful smile. An hour passed quickly, and the first round of competition was over. Ain and Bins also each defeated their opponents and advanced to the next round. Instructor did not let everyone rest and directly announced the start of the second round of competition. Second round, third game. Air stepped onto the ring again. This time his opponent was replaced by a strong man who was thought to be 1.8 meters tall. Looking at his fierce look, Air couldn't help but complain. What did you eat to grow up? You are only 13 or 4 years old, but you are already so tall. Especially since Air is only 1.27 meters tall now, he still needs to look up at him when looking at him, which makes Air very unhappy. Following instructor's order, Air drew his knife and launched the first attack. Shave. His figure flashed and appeared beside the opponent, wielding his long knife and slashing him quickly. Albert was very surprised, turned around quickly, and subconsciously covered his chest with his hands. A flash of sword light flashed, and big wounds appeared on Albert's hands, and blood continued to ooze out. Now that this kid has mastered shaving, Albert left a drop of cold sweat, and regardless of his injured hands, he quickly punched Air. He blocked the attack with his sword and easily defused the attack. Air crouched down to take advantage of the victory and struck him in the chest with 3 consecutive slashes. Albert clutched his chest and fell to the ground in pain. Instructor quickly stopped the game and stepped forward to check. Fortunately, Air kept his hand and the man only suffered some superficial injuries. After understanding the situation, the instructor ordered people to carry him down for treatment, and then loudly announced to everyone, "On the 12th, Air wins." The students below were excited, and then the field burst into warm applause. Chapter 15 Battle Against Ain. Little Air did a great job, easily defeating that guy Albert. I already knew that Little Air could win. I see how hard he trains every day. Air-chan, my sister is optimistic about you. The hilarity here immediately attracted the attention of the senior students and instructors such as Zephyr. When they saw the small figure on the stage, they couldn't help but be secretly surprised. It's that kid just now. I didn't expect him to be quite capable. Smoker thought to himself as he took a puff of his cigar and allowed his opponent to attack him continuously. Okay, it's time to end this boring game. White fist. The fist made of smoke hit the opponent's face directly, sending the person flying for more than 10 meters before stopping. Number 31, Smoker wins. Ignoring the envious and admiring looks of the students, Smoker walked off the stage. In the next few hours, after several rounds of competition, we finally came to the finals. Everyone had lunch and took a short rest before returning to the ring, looking forward to the afternoon competition. Air stood directly on the ring and waited for his opponent. That's right, Air made it to the end as expected, and he was about to face his close sister Ain. As for Bins, he met Ain in the semi-finals. After the two fought, he was touched by Ain using his fruit power and turned into a 1-year-old baby in front of everyone, making a big fool of himself. Now I am probably secretly feeling sad in an unknown corner. After a second of silence for poor Bins, Air returned his attention to the ring. At this time, Ain has also arrived. She is holding 2 short swords in her hands and staring at her seriously, as if she will rush up and give her a blow at any time. My ability can make people regress 12 years, and you are only 8 years old, so I won't use my ability on you, Ain said seriously. What's wrong with the 8-year-old? The 8-year-old eats your ice. Air's mouth twitched, and he also drew out the long knife and responded, "Thank you very much, but I will not be merciful." Seeing that the two of them had finished their harsh words, Instructor announced the start very sensibly. Air still does the same old trick. He starts by shaving his hands and then goes up with a knife. However, Ain's strength cannot be underestimated. She swung the sword with her left hand and pushed away Air's knife. When his middle door was wide open, she stabbed him in the chest with the sword in her right hand. "You are quite powerful." Air muttered something and quickly put away his sword to defend. There was a jingling exchange, and the two jumped back at the same time to distance themselves. Looking at Air, who was unscathed, Ain couldn't help but praise, "I didn't expect you to be so good at swordsmanship. It seems I still underestimate you." However, she changed the subject and said seriously, "I'm going to use all my strength next, so be careful." Holding the knife in both hands on guard, Air said with a smile, "It's what I asked for." Shave 2. Double sword style middle dot crosscut. The two disappeared and appeared at the same time. Ain crossed his swords and struck at her. Air blocked with his sword, and the two struggled for a while, then changed their moves and fought together again. Ding, clang, dozens of back and forth. Neither of them could do anything to the other. However, Air was keenly aware that Ain was already slightly out of breath. After all, I am a zone ability user, so I am not afraid of anyone compared to my physical strength. Ain also knew that he could not defeat him, so he had to fight quickly. The two fought again, and Ain's swords flew at an extremely fast speed. Air, on the other hand, parried one by one without any haste. But suddenly Air stepped on the air. His center of gravity was unstable, and he fell to the side. No, she changed the ground with a fruit. Unfortunately, he realized it was too late at this time. Air's right hand slashed hard towards Air's chest with all his strength. When Nanny, a layer of scales appeared on Air's chest, perfectly blocking Ain's attack. Air raised the corners of his mouth and whispered, "It's my turn." Shave. So fast. Ain held his sword vigilantly, feeling a storm in his heart. Air passed around her like an after-image, and her eyes couldn't keep up with Air's speed. "Behind you." Ain was startled and quickly looked back, but saw nothing. Oops. A figure appeared behind her and kicked her away. "How can you believe what the enemy says?" Air joked with a smile. After getting up from the ground with difficulty, Ain wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, looked at Air who had turned into a human animal form, and sighed helplessly. "No need to compete anymore. I have already lost." "This should not be your full strength." Air nodded. "After all, we are friends. There are some moves that I can't use on you." As expected, Ain smiled bitterly and congratulated him. Instructor was very surprised when he saw Ain abstaining, but he still shouted loudly, "On the 11th, Air wins. I declare that the leader of this elite class is Air." The audience burst into applause, and it was at this moment that the students of the same class were truly impressed by Air. While envious, I also recognized his strength from the bottom of my heart. Chapter 16 I want to challenge you. On the high platform, Zephyr nodded happily after witnessing the competition between the two. Based on his years of experience, this kid will definitely become a senior general of Marine given time. Listening to the instructor's confirmation and the cheers from the audience, Air raised his right hand and shouted excitedly, "Haha, I declare that the position of the future Marine Admiral belongs to me." Haha tilde. Marine Admiral? This kid is so crazy. The students around him, especially the senior students, all cast unkind glances at him. Zephyr slapped his head and said, "This character needs to be changed." After the victory was decided on Air's side, the competition in other arenas quickly ended. As he expected, Very Good and Smoker took over the top positions in the 5th and 6th graders, and the 40-year-old chief among them turned out to be an acquaintance. He was a weirdo with a kerchief covering his face, and his name was Hyun. It is the person with the rust fruit ability who removes the rust from Zora's snow in the original work. As for chiefs of other ages, he didn't know them. As expected of an elite class, we can actually see so many famous and strong people. Air sighed slightly. Now that the chiefs have been separated, Zephyr also stepped forward and began to speak. Now the top 5 at each level come forward. After hearing his words, 35 people from the elite class plus the ordinary class stepped forward, waiting for Zephyr's instructions. You all have the qualifications to choose your opponent. They can be seniors or instructors. Of course you don't want to challenge. Now, who wants to be the first to try? As soon as he finished speaking, Air was the first to jump out. "I'll do it." After saying that, he walked straight to Smoker, looked up at him and said loudly, "I want to challenge you." Wow tilde. The crowd was in an uproar and looked at him in disbelief, wondering if their ears had heard wrongly. Hina in the crowd crossed her arms and said, "You overestimated your abilities." Hina hates him. Ain, who is Air's friend, and Bins, who appeared out of nowhere, looked worried. "It's all over. Why did Air think of challenging the 6th grade seniors?" "The famous Smoker," Bins said anxiously, covering his face. Ain ignored him, just clasped his hands, looked at Air worriedly, and silently cheered him on. His tilde. After blowing out the smoke and looking at Air, who was barely touching his chest, Smoker said calmly, "Kid, I admit that you have some strength, but you are still far from defeating me." You kid, you're so rude." Pouting his lips, Air said seriously, "How will you know if you don't try? If you underestimate me, you will suffer loss." "Yeah, then let me see what you're capable of." After saying that, Smoker strode onto the ring and accepted Air's challenge. Air was not to be outdone, and walked to the opposite side of him with the pace of disowning his relatives. "Are you sure you want to challenge Smoker?" Zephyr asked after seeing the two of them getting ready. "I'm sure," Air said firmly. This is not because he overestimates his capabilities, but rather a decision he made after careful consideration. That's right, Smoker is Logia and Air can't hit him. But Air himself is also a fantasy beast and can also use elemental attacks. As long as you don't fight with him, contain him from a distance. Relying on the fruit's restorative power, Air was confident of slowly dragging him to death. "In this case, I declare Air to challenge Smoker, starting now." Without saying a word, Air took a deep breath and sprayed a pillar of fire directly towards Smoker. The roar of the fire dragon. This is a skill that Air developed during this time by imitating the male protagonist of a certain anime. Smoker, who was originally careless, froze in place when he saw the pillar of fire coming straight towards him. Is he a Logia too? No, I just saw that he had grown scales and claws. He must be Zones. That fire-breathing zone. Thinking of this, Smoker couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. I didn't expect that this kid would be a user with the ability of the Phantom Beast species that is even rarer than myself. However, don't think that just because you are a fantasy beast, you can challenge me. White Fist. Smoker's right hand turned into smoke and hit the pillar of fire at an extremely fast speed. The two are entangled with each other during the collision. During the stalemate, the entire arena was obscured by smoke. Both the audience and Smoker lost sight of the scene. Suddenly a strong gust of wind blew away the smoke on the stage, and only then did everyone see clearly what happened. Zephyr looked at the giant dragon flying high in the sky, which was at least 5 or 6 meters long, with a surprised look on his face, and secretly sighed, "Are the fruits even developed well? This kid really can surprise me every time." Then, what is that? Is it the legendary dragon? Yes, it was the kid who just changed. Are you kidding? Is this the kid's ability? But why can he breathe fire? A group of passers-by were discussing in a hurry. This is the ability of the Phantom Beast, an ability even rarer than Logia. Hina lit a cigarette and explained to the people around her. "No wonder you dare to challenge Smoker. He now remembers you." Chapter 17 Who do you think Laozi is? Smoker also looked at the giant dragon in the sky in surprise, looking at his mighty Haki appearance and the pair of gently flapping dragon wings. "I see. Are you trying to defeat me by taking advantage of the sky? It's a pity that you are not the only one who can fly." With this thought in his mind, Smoker's lower body turned into smoke and rose into the sky, chasing Air. Will this allow you to chase me? Look at my firebombs. Ooh ho ho. Air spits fireballs at Smoker like spit, although the flames were ineffective against him. The loss of vision at that moment was inevitable. By the time Smoker burst out of the fireball, Air was already flapping his wings away from him. Before Smoker could catch up, Air shot out 5 more fireballs to block his steps. Damn you brat, don't run away and fight me openly. You idiot, come and catch me if you can. In this way, under everyone's gaze, the two of them chased each other like a game. They were in a stalemate for more than 4 hours, but there was still no winner. The students below were all sitting on the ground chatting out of boredom, and some even snored. Isn't it over yet? This is too torturous. Oh, this is even more uncomfortable than letting me train. They have been tired for so long. They are simply monsters. Not to mention others. Air couldn't bear it even more at this time. I saw him gasping for air and had returned to his human form. Only a pair of wings remained to maintain his flight. The Smoker on the opposite side was not much better, and he could no longer hold on. This kind of pursuit can't be chased, and it can't be touched. It took a lot of effort to hit him, but he was fine after just 2 breaths. Who knows what it feels like to continue to distance yourself from you? Looking at Air's little face, Smoker felt itchy with hatred. I wanted to rush up and punch him twice. Unfortunately, Air was very vigilant. As soon as he made any move, he would immediately pull away and spit at him twice, dragon flame, in a disgusting manner. After struggling like this for another 20 minutes, Smoker finally couldn't bear it anymore. He shouted angrily, "You bastard kid, who do you think Laozi is? FK, dare you say this?" It seems Laozi is sure to win. Air narrowed his eyes slightly, then opened them suddenly. A domineering aura swept through the surroundings and struck directly into Smoker's heart. Suddenly oppressed by such momentum, Smoker couldn't help but froze on the spot. Good chance. Air used all his strength to transform into a dragon again, swung his thick tail, and swung it hard towards his face. "Eat my dragon's tail!" Snapped. There was a dull sound of physical collision, and Smoker flew backwards like a cannonball. He hit the wall so hard that his entire upper body was stuck in the wall and he lost consciousness on the spot. Conquerors briefly suppressed elementalization. Panting and waiting for a while, Air waved his hands in celebration. "Success! I won! I am the strongest in the elite camp!" Ha 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 tilde. It's a pity that no one can applaud him this time. After the impact of Conquerors just now, most of the students including Ain and Bins lost consciousness. Only a few people, such as Hina and Berry Good, could barely stay awake. This is because Air Haki's level is too low, otherwise they would all fall down one by one. Looking at Air celebrating, Hina and others, including the instructors, all had one word in their minds: monster. At this moment, Zephyr's figure jumped down from the high platform, came behind Air, and punched hard. "You bastard, look at what you've done!" Boom! Air screamed in pain and fell to the ground and passed out. "TCH, your body has reached its limit, so I'll bypass you for the time being. Hey, send this kid to the infirmary to rest." As for the remaining people, looking at the unconscious students, Zephyr's lips curled into a sneer. "Get up, you brats!" Bang, bang. Zephyr used his fists to smash large craters on the ground, forcing everyone to wake up from unconsciousness. Help! What happened? Someone invaded? Teacher Zephyr, stop it, someone will die. The students howled like ghosts and ran away in all directions. This is the energy that young people should have. Everyone, if you don't want to die, run away. You useless guys, you don't want to be a good marine enough. Air doesn't know what kind of inhuman treatment the students suffered. When he woke up again, it was already a day later. It's so comfortable to sleep. After stretching, Air felt refreshed all over. "Shut up, you brat, you're making so much noise." A cold voice sounded from the side, interrupting Air. Turning his head to look to the side, Air greeted him happily. "Hey, Senior Smoker, I didn't expect you to be here too." Smoker was lying on another hospital bed, his head wrapped in bandages, holding a cigarette in his mouth and looking at the ceiling, paying no attention to him. "It's so cold, Senior, but then again, why am I sleeping here?" He scratched his head and looked around in confusion. To be honest, this was Air's first time entering the infirmary. In the past, whether he was injured or fainted due to excessive training, he would lie down for a while and then get up again vigorously, without any need for treatment. Chapter 18 Question. At this time, the door was opened, and Ain and Bins walked in, talking and laughing. When they saw that Air had woken up, they happily ran to him and asked about his situation. "Air, you're awake. How are you feeling? Is your body okay?" Ain asked with concern, showing off his biceps. Air smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'm completely healed." "Hee, I knew you were fine," Ain said happily. Bins on the side saw that Air was in good condition, so he pushed away Ain and asked curiously, "Air, what was that move you used yesterday? It was so powerful that all the students were stunned by you." Having said this, Bins's eyes glowed with little stars, and he looked at him expectantly. Even Smoker, who had been silent on the other side, quietly pricked up his ears, wanting to hear Air's answer. Talking about this, Air didn't feel sleepy anymore. He turned over and sat up from the bed, pointed his thumb at himself, and said proudly, "This is Conqueror's Haki. He is only one among millions of people. He has the qualifications of a king!" How awesome is that? Yeah. Ain and Bins looked at him with admiration and nodded in response. Smoker snorted, very unhappy with Air's arrogance. However, he still silently remembered Air's words in his heart. "Conquerors? I don't know if I have this qualification." The three of them chatted for a while, then packed up and left. Before leaving, Air greeted Smoker warmly. It's a pity that Smoker had a livid face and didn't respond at all. After the doctor checked and confirmed that he was fine, Air was successfully discharged from the hospital. Our fresh air, a beautiful day is about to begin again. Before he could finish his emotion, an unknown student came to him and said to him, "Senior Air, Teacher Zephyr asked you to go to his office after you wake up. You are really awesome. Even Senior Smoker was defeated by you. If possible, can you sign your autograph for me?" After saying this, the guy actually took out a pen and paper from his pocket and handed it to Air. Air took the pen with a confused look and asked curiously, "You want my autograph? Am I so famous now?" The student rubbed his nose in embarrassment and explained, "The main reason is that you are very strong, and I heard that you are only 8 years old. My classmates all agreed that you will become a big shot in the future, so I thought about getting your autograph in advance so that I might be able to show it off later." "Yeah, ha ha ha. I think so too." Air accepted his compliment shamelessly, and signed his full name on the paper seriously, and also added the words "Future Marine Admiral." The student happily accepted the signature and enthusiastically led him to Zephyr's office. After waving goodbye to the two of them, Air quickly followed. After Air left, Ain and Dane, who stayed there, looked at me and I looked at you. Both of them were speechless. I didn't expect Air to be so popular now. It seems I have to work hard. Ain clenched her fists and said firmly. After speaking, she looked at Bins to ask his opinion. Bins touched his chin and said thoughtfully, "Why didn't I think of asking him for his autograph? If he really becomes an admiral, then I can make a lot of money by selling his autographs." As soon as he clapped his hands, Bins became excited. "We are friends after all. Isn't it natural that you should give me hundreds of signed photos? Haha, I'm going to get rich." After saying that, he looked at Ain and asked, "Ain, do you want to join me? We can make a lot of money." Ain clenched his pink fist and punched him hard in the face, sending him flying back to the infirmary. "Doctor, there is a patient here. Please treat him." On the other side, Air knocked on the office door after thanking the unknown senior. "Please come in." "Oh, it's you, little brat." Zephyr looked up, and after realizing it was Air, he stopped what he was doing and said. As soon as he came to the door, Air walked to the desk, saluted, and said loudly, "Teacher Zephyr, Air from the elite class is here to report." Zephyr snorted coldly, "Stop being so pretentious, just find a seat and sit down." Air chuckled, sat down on the big sofa in the office, and asked, "Teacher Zephyr, what's the matter with calling me here?" "It's not a big deal, I just have some issues I need to discuss with you." After a pause, Zephyr continued, "Originally, according to the rules, you can be directly promoted to the graduating class after defeating Smoker. But considering that you are too young and still have a lot to learn, I suppressed the matter. What do you think about this?" Spreading his hands, Air said nonchalantly, "Teacher, you can arrange this kind of thing. Besides, I've only been here for a few days, so there's no need to drive me away in such a hurry. After all, I haven't even learned Haki yet, and it's just a matter of time before I go out just to die." "HMPH, you are very self-aware. In that case, it's decided. When you master all 6 postures one day, I will teach you Haki myself." "Really? Then thank you, teacher," Air said happily. "Why don't you be happy? This is the personal teaching of the former Marine Admiral. Most people don't get this kind of treatment." Chapter 19. 5 years later. "Okay, let's talk about the next thing." Zephyr stood up, took out a snow-white and gorgeous knife from the knife holder behind the desk, walked towards Air and gestured, "Pull it out and take a look. I specially applied for it for you." The moment the knife appeared, Air was attracted to it. He stood up and carefully took it, then gently pulled out the knife. This is a long winter that ranks among the 50 best swords. It is a white lacquered sword with a thin blade, an extremely long blade, and a small straight edge. It is a rare and famous sword, Zephyr introduced patiently. After waving it a few times and feeling it, Air sheathed the knife with satisfaction and said gratefully, "Thank you, teacher. I like this knife very much." "As long as you like it, you can get out now." Zephyr waved his hand and chased them away. Air smiled and put the fruits on the table into his arms, saluted and fled immediately. "You bastard, come back here." Zephyr rushed out the door, looked at Air's disappearing back, shook his head in amusement, and continued to work. Air ran out of the office building, took the newly acquired famous sword, played with it admiringly, and encouraged himself with enthusiasm. Practice. Effort. Become stronger. Run 100,000 meters for Marine Admiral. With a roar, Air ran away amid the strange looks of passers-by. Zephyr, who was at work, smiled happily and continued to work hard. Time flies so fast. 5 years have passed in a blink of an eye. See Circle Calendar 1515, Marine School, Elite Training Camp. 2 figures, 1 purple and 1 black, were fighting fiercely. Shave. Xuanayu air dodged and appeared behind Zephyr, slashing out an arc of sword energy with a sweep. Zephyr did not dodge or dodge, and defeated the sword energy with one powerful punch with his fist trapped in armament color. Boy, is this all you have? Zephyr taunted and hit Air with his fist. Air also did not dodge, covering his lower abdomen with the armed color and shouting, "Armed color iron body steel." Boom. With a loud bang, Air gritted his teeth and held on for a while, before being blasted dozens of meters away by Zephyr and falling heavily to the ground. Touching the blood at the corner of his mouth, Air stood up in pain. Trash iron body, not even for dogs. Muttering secretly, Air instantly transformed into a human animal form and rushed forward. The chendong in his hand suddenly ignited with flames, and as he swung out a flame slash, it struck Zephyr hard. Uakai Air sword leaps into flames. Zephyr crossed his arms and was pushed back a few meters by the sword energy. His hands covered in armament color left no trace. It's not over yet, Ichita style. Dragon flame, draw your sword and slash. Air roared and sheathed the sword, then sent out a dragon-shaped flame slash towards Zephyr. You have some skills, kid. Zephyr suddenly jumped into the air. Tempest kick. He exerted force with his legs, and slash waves struck Air. Air also launched a large and exaggerated slashing wave to intercept all attacks, and still had enough energy to continue attacking Zephyr. Zephyr used moonwalk in the air to easily dodge, and even he couldn't help but smack his lips slightly when he saw the slashes passing by him. Teacher, you said you can't be distracted while fighting so fast. Air flapped his wings and kicked Zephyr on the back with his feet that turned into claws. Finger pistol fire dragon lotus. Bang! Zephyr took a hard blow and crashed from the sky into the ground. Air increased its altitude and suddenly turned into a giant dragon of more than 30 meters. It opened its dragon snout and spit out a pillar of fire with a diameter of 5 meters toward the ground. The roar of the fire dragon. After continuing to output for half a minute, Air felt something was wrong, so he stopped. At this moment, his vision alerted him wildly, and a figure appeared above his head. I should have warned you that the bigger you are, the easier it is to become a target, kid. Iron body broken. There was nothing fancy, just a simple punch on Air's head, and Air rolled his eyes and hit the ground. Boom. When such a huge dragon smashed down, the entire training ground was completely destroyed. It hurts, damn old man, don't you know how to hold back some strength? Air rubbed his head and got up as if nothing was wrong. Just when he was about to attack Zephyr again, Zephyr coughed. He quickly took out a spray and sprayed it into his mouth a few times. After he recovered, he spoke. That's it. I'm getting older and my body can't keep up. And if I keep playing, the training camp will be completely destroyed. Air, in dragon form, looked around. There was a big pit in the middle of the playground, and blazing heat was radiating around it. The student dormitories not far away were also affected, with windows broken one after another. A lot of people have gathered outside the college, probably attracted by the commotion here to check the situation. Really, the movement is getting louder and louder. I can't move at all in such a small place. Air dusted himself off and complained softly. He hadn't even warmed up in the half-hour battle. Zephyr walked over and said angrily, "Be content, kid. This is the naval headquarters, not a battlefield for you to destroy wantonly. If the damage is too serious, that guy Sengoku will cause trouble for me." Curling his lips, Air did not refute. After saying hello to Zephyr, he left alone. Chapter 20 New System Functions. Looking at his back, Zephyr's eyes flashed. It's time for this kid to go out and have some experience. Zephyr, you bastard, look what you've done. An angry shout interrupted his thoughts. I'm going to suffer! Looking back, I saw that Sengoku guy was charging towards me angrily. After looking around, Zephyr sighed and stayed where he was, waiting for Sengoku's saliva. Not to mention, Zephyr accepted Marshal Sengoku's reprimand like a pupil who made a mistake. Air on the other side returned to the dormitory alone. Under the adoring eyes of the students, Air closed the door, lay down on the bed, and called out the system. Open the personal panel. Ding tilde. Nefertari D. Air. Sex, male. Age, 13. Height, 172. Personal abilities, Constitution A, 2631 30,000. Swordsmanship A, 370 30,000. Physical skills A, 755 30,000. Haki, armament Hakib 4103 10,000ths. Observation Hakib 3854 10,000ths. Conquerors Hakib 1760 10,000ths. Skill moves, Shaver, 8581 10,000ths. Moonwalk, 7261 10,000ths. Tempest kick, 7475 10,000ths. Finger pistol, 6894 10,000ths. Iron bodic, 4,514 5,000, Paper Arts, 3,955 5,000. Devil Fruit, Dragon Fruit A, 8,774 30,000. Overall rating, A+, stronger than most. Vice Admiral sighed and felt a little worried. He had been practicing very hard in the past 5 years, but as his level increased, the skills required more and more experience. Now his strength has reached a bottleneck and he cannot break through quickly. In distress, he covers his head and doesn't know what to do. At this moment, a sound suddenly came from the system. Ding, it is detected that the host is agitated, and the system is querying the solution. Ding, query successful. Tip: host, experience points do not have to be obtained through exercise. You can also gain experience by hunting strong ones. It is detected that the host joins the Marine. The host can obtain a certain percentage of experience by hunting and capturing pirates based on the bounty offered by the pirates. Note: the ratio of bounty to experience is 10,000 to 1. A pirate with a bounty of 10 million is worth 1,000 experience points, and so on. After listening to the system's explanation, fell into silence. Momo took out a cigarette, given by Hina, from the bedside and lit it. Took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. System, you stupid thing, I'm going to FK you. Why didn't you tell me about such an important thing earlier? Do you know how long Laozi has worked hard for experience? You stupid thing. Apostrophe. Ding, host, please calm down. Calm down you still have the nerve to tell me to calm down? FK you. Ding, please host, listen to my explanation. Okay. Laozi, listen to your explanation. Say it quickly. Apostrophe. Ding, the system only told the host this news after realizing that the host was about to go overseas. At the same time, the host was asked to understand that without a complete set of guidance, the host would not be able to learn various skills, especially Hakis. Really going to see? What do you mean? Make it clear to me. Apostrophe. Host will know tomorrow. The Riddler, right? Come on, otherwise Laozi will chop you down. Apostrophe. Unfortunately, no matter how called the system, there was no response, as if it didn't exist at all. Okay, you bitch, just ignore me. Apostrophe. There was nothing he could do about it, so could only cover himself with a quilt and force himself to fall asleep. I want to see what happens tomorrow. Apostrophe. After thinking about it, gradually calmed down and fell asleep after a while. 7 a.m. the next day. In his sleep, was awakened by a rapid knock on the door. He sat up helplessly, rubbed his eyes and opened the door with an unhappy look on his face. He said angrily, "Why are you knocking on the door so early in the morning?" Standing at the door was a young sailor. He said expressionlessly, right? The Marshal wants to see you." Marshal? Who was confused, said to him, "Wait a minute," then closed the door and started washing. "Although I have met the Marshal several times, this is the first time I have been called over. Could it be related to what the system said yesterday about going overseas?" Thinking of this, speeded up, and 5 minutes later, he walked out wearing a brand new military uniform. The man looked at him for a few times, turned around and said, "Follow me." After that, he left. Didn't think too much and followed silently. After turning left and right and walking up several flights of stairs, finally arrived in front of the Marshal's office. Just as the man was about to knock on the door, he heard an argument coming from inside. "Gup, you bastard, give me back my senpai." "Haha, Sengoku, don't be so stingy, come and try my new donuts." "Go to hell." Boom. "Ah, it hurts." "Bastard Sengoku. Do you want to fight?" Then there was the sound of ping ping pong pong fighting inside. And the man looked at each other. The man scratched his head in embarrassment and said, "I suddenly remember that Okiji Admiral came to see me for something. You can go in by yourself." After that, he ran away and disappeared. Damn, this bastard actually ran away. Apostrophe. Cursing secretly, knocked on the door helplessly. There was a sudden silence inside, and then the words "Please come in" were heard after a burst of rustling. Chapter 21. Lieutenant Colonel. Opening the door, walked in as if nothing had happened. He looked around quietly from the corner of his eye and found Sengoku and Garp sitting peacefully on chairs. When everything was normal, he stood at attention and saluted. "Marshal Sengoku, Marine Academy Neferutari DR is here to report." A strange man with an afro, glasses, and a braided beard, with a seagull standing on the military cap on his head, was drinking tea leisurely, as if nothing had happened. Sengoku put down the teacup and looked her up and down, nodded with satisfaction and praised, right? You performed very well. That guy Zephyr often mentioned you to me." Was about to reply when Garp, who was silently eating senpai at the side, suddenly said, "Ah, it's the kid I didn't expect you have grown so tall after not seeing you for so many years." "Hey, Sengoku, I like this kid very much. You can give it to me. Come on to my boat." Sengoku's veins popped out. He clenched his fist and slammed it on the table, spitting, "Asshole, I will arrange where this kid goes. You sit aside and sit quietly for me. Also, who allows you to eat my immortality?" "Damn it." Ha ha tilde. After taking a few breaths, Sengoku looked at her and sighed, Forget it, I won't talk nonsense. I called you here today to inform you that you have graduated. From today on, you are officially the Lieutenant Colonel of the headquarters. You can choose a unit to serve in, or go to a certain branch to garrison. It's your choice. After speaking, Sengoku took a sip of tea silently and waited for Air's reply. At this point, Air also understood the meaning of the system and began to think about the future path. He suddenly raised his head, looked seriously at Marshal Sengoku, and said, "Please be sure to send me to serve in the unit with the most female soldiers." Puff! Exclamation mark. Squirting out the tea he just drank, Sengoku slammed the table and roared angrily, "You bastard, what nonsense are you talking about?" Ha 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 tilde. Garp patted his thigh on the side, laughing with tears streaming down his face. "Ha ha, boy Air, you really like me." Air smiled awkwardly and spoke to calm Sengoku's mood. "I'm sorry, Marshal, I accidentally said what was in my heart." Sengoku became even more angry after saying this, but fortunately Air even tried to make up for it. What, if possible, can I be stationed alone at Alabasta? Of course I will patrol nearby at all times." Sengoku snorted coldly, crossed his arms and said angrily, "Boy, how dare you say that? You must know that Alabasta is under the jurisdiction of the G34 branch." After a pause, looking at Air who was a little disappointed, he said again, "But because of your excellent grades, I allow it." Air was overjoyed and was about to say thank you when Sengoku reached out to stop him. "Of course, I also have requirements. You must capture a pirate with a bounty of over 100 million within 3 months before I can approve your request. Otherwise, you should just find a branch to stay." Grinning, he gave a military salute happily, and Air promised, "Leave it to me, I will definitely complete the task perfectly." "I hope so," Sengoku said with a smile. After speaking, he stood up, came to Air with a military uniform in his hands, and said seriously, "Marine Academy Air, in my capacity as Marshal of the Naval Headquarters, I now officially appoint you as Lieutenant Colonel of the Naval Headquarters. This is your new uniform and appointment document." Air took over the military uniform excitedly and immediately saw the big word Justice on the top. "The Great Cloak of Justice. I finally have my own Great Cloak of Justice." Hearing his murmur, Sengoku smiled slightly. "Okay, if you like it, go back and try it slowly. You are leaving tomorrow. Take advantage of this time to say goodbye to your friends." "Yes, Marshal Sengoku." Air hugged his clothes tightly, turned around and left the marshal's office, happily looking for Ain and the others. Sengoku turned back to the chair, and the big bump on the back of his head was clearly visible. Looking at Garp who was still eating senpai, he became furious again. "Garp, if you are so free, go and patrol the New World. The pirates there have been very rampant recently, and Marine is severely short of manpower." After stuffing the last mouthful of senpai into his mouth, Garp stood up and stretched, holding his nose and said, "No, I have to go back to see my grandson, and I don't have time to deal with those guys." After saying that, he left calmly. "Hey, Garp, you bastard. If you can, don't go back to the headquarters for the rest of your life. Otherwise, I will definitely make you look good." Unfortunately, before he finished speaking, Garp had already left. Sengoku rubbed his head and said worriedly, "Really, none of these guys are worry-free." Air on the other side happily ran back to his dormitory after leaving the marine building. When he opened the door, he didn't expect this guy Bins to be there. This dormitory was originally a 2-person room, and he and Bins lived together. It's just that Bins had personal matters and took leave for a few days. "Hey, Bins, I didn't expect you to come back so soon. Have you settled everything?" Bins, who was making the bed, turned around and realized that the person who came was Air, and greeted him happily. Chapter 22 Farewell. "It's Air, it's okay, everything is settled. By the way, what is that in your arms?" After greeting him warmly, Bins's attention was attracted by the military uniform in Air's arms. Air chuckled, came to his bed and put down his things. Then he took off his ordinary soldier uniform and put on the new clothes given by Sengoku. "Dang dang dang, how about it? Am I handsome or not?" Bins opened his mouth and looked at Air in disbelief. I saw that he was wearing a white suit and a handsome cloak of justice. With his handsome facial features and strong body, he looked like a perfect marine officer. Bins's eyes widened and he said in surprise, "Hey, Air, where did you get these clothes?" "Could it be?" Air nodded. "Yes, I have officially graduated now. I will leave the headquarters tomorrow and go out to perform tasks. By the way, I am now Lieutenant Colonel. Remember to salute when you see me." Bin swallowed enviously and saluted him with a smile. "Hello, sir." Air was amused by his appearance and laughed happily. Bins was also amused, and the two started to fight. While playing, Bin suddenly stopped. He said with a look of loneliness on his face, "In this case, wouldn't we be separated? We have been together for 5 years, and it would probably be boring if you left." Air also stopped playing around. After a moment of silence, he smiled and said, "It's not like I won't come back. We are all Marines and we will always meet on the sea. Besides, you and Dane will graduate next year. We will still have many opportunities at sea after you graduate." After being enlightened, Bins was no longer depressed. Speaking of Ain, Have you told her about your graduation? Not yet. You're the first to know. Really? Then let's go find her now and tell her the good news. Let's go. After saying that, the two left the dormitory and looked for Ain in the college. Along the way, Air's dress attracted the attention of many students. Hey, isn't that Senior Air? Has he already graduated? I guess so. He looks like he has a high military rank. Of course. Senior Air is a real monster. Even the ordinary Rear Admiral probably can't beat him. As expected of Senior Air, you are so awesome. When the two heirs found Ain, she was practicing swordsmanship hard in a training ground. Bins waved and shouted from a distance, "Hey Ain!" Ain stopped what he was doing, put his swords back into their scabbards, touched the sweat on his head, and said happily, "Bins, Air, you are here." After 5 years of growth, Ain has grown from a cute girl to the slim beauty she is today. She was wearing an ordinary military uniform, with two fair arms exposed. Perhaps because she was too hot during exercise, 2 buttons on her chest were undone. Sweat flowed down the slender neck, past the collarbone, and finally fell into the deep ravine. When the two got closer, Ain realized something was wrong. "Air, you are dressed like this." Air flicked his cloak and said proudly, "Haha, I'm now a lieutenant colonel in the headquarters." "What do you mean? I look very handsome." Watching Air pose in various poses, Ain smiled and praised him. Air couldn't help but blush when he said this. "Haha, it's not as good as you said. By the way, After being modest, Air told Ain the news that he was leaving. Although Ain was a little disappointed, he quickly adjusted. She held one in each hand and led the way forward, saying as she walked, "Since you are leaving, let's say goodbye to you properly and celebrate your promotion to Lieutenant Colonel. There are many shops opened by military families in Marineford. Let's have a good day today and relax." Air and Bins looked at each other, raised their hands and shouted, "Oh, let's go." At 11 o'clock in the middle of the night, Air helped the two slightly drunk people back to their dormitories, and then went to Zephyr's residence alone. Looking at the window that was still lit, Air stepped forward and knocked on the door. "Who?" "It's me, Teacher Zephyr." "Phew." The door opens. Zephyr looked at Air standing at the door, took a few glances, and stepped aside. "Come in." Air walked in politely, put on his slippers, and came to the kitchen. "Teacher Zephyr, look what I brought you." After saying this, Air took out a bottle of sherry from nowhere and opened it. After pouring one glass from each of the 2 glasses, Air came to the living room with a wine glass. Zephyr took the proffered wine glass, took a sip and drank it. "It tastes good. But you kid is not yet an adult, so I helped you drink this wine." After saying that, he grabbed Air's wine glass and drank it in one gulp. Hey, Teacher Zephyr, don't drink mine too," he complained, but he still silently added another glass for Zephyr. "Kid, it's too early for you to drink." After saying that, Zephyr was silent for a while before asking, "So, what's the point of coming to see me so late?" It's nothing. It's just that I will officially go out to sea to carry out my mission tomorrow. I wanted to come over and tell you." "TCH, are you still a child? Don't report such trivial matters to me." Air stood up, bowed respectfully and thanked, "Teacher Zephyr, thank you for your teachings over the years." Zephyr looked at the wine glass in his hand and drank the wine in one gulp. "Go away, kid, stop saying such disgusting words." Air straightened up, glanced at him, turned around and left silently. "Kid, be careful, don't die." Her hand on the doorknob paused, and tears burst into her eyes. Air wiped her tears, opened the door and walked out. Another young man sets sail with his dream. Chapter 23. Beautiful Adjutant. Early the next morning, at the port of Marineford, Air, who didn't want to be sad about parting, stopped Ain and Dane from coming to see him off and came here alone. When he arrived, the same man from yesterday stopped him, took out a letter of appointment and said, "Lieutenant Colonel Air, according to the order of the Marshal, you will lead a warship to station in Alabasta and patrol the surrounding waters. This is your letter of appointment. Please confirm." Air took the document, glanced at it briefly, and asked him, "Where is my warship?" "Take me there to see it." "Plaza, follow me." Not long after the two left, the man stopped in front of the warship. "Lieutenant Colonel Air, this is it." It is 66 meters long and 35 meters wide. It is a standard medium-sized warship. The Marshal has also equipped you with an adjutant and 100 strictly trained sailors, including cooks, a total of 120 people including navigators, doctors, etc. Wow! Air's eyes were shining with stars, and he nodded repeatedly while listening to his introduction. "Great, this is the romance of a man." "Thank you uncle, I'll go up first." After saying that, Air jumped onto the warship. "Uncle, how rude, I'm only 28 years old." The corner of the man's mouth twitched, and he turned around and left helplessly. As soon as Air jumped onto the warship, he was pointed at dozens of guns. A beautiful female marine wearing a coat of justice shouted loudly, "Who are you?" "This is Naval Headquarters, Lieutenant Colonel Air's ship. Unrelated personnel please leave." Scratching his head in embarrassment, Air raised his hands in surrender and said, "Well, I am Air." "And Nanny, put the gun away quickly," the female marine exclaimed and ordered. Then she quickly trotted forward, bent down and apologized. "I'm sorry, Lieutenant Colonel Air, It was my dereliction of duty for not recognizing you. Forget it. It's not a big deal, and you did the right thing, so you don't need to apologize to me." After hearing the compliment, the female Marine straightened up and bowed to Air and introduced, "I'm so rude. Please allow me to introduce myself. I am Nasha, Naval Headquarters Lieutenant Junior Grade, and I am the adjutant assigned to you by the Marshal. In the future, please give me some advice." Please give me some advice." Air quickly returned the greeting. But he quickly reacted, "Are you my adjutant?" Nasha stood upright and said loudly and forcefully, "Kaidos." "Yes, Lieutenant Colonel." Air rubbed his chin and looked at Nasha. She has long, smooth golden hair, delicate facial features, and must be 180 centimeters tall. He was wearing a tight white t-shirt on the upper body, ultra-short blue hot pants on the lower body, and a long sword on his waist. There are two big mountains on her chest. She holds her t-shirt up high and her long legs wearing high heels are particularly eye-catching. "Sure enough, Marshal Sengoku took a fancy to me and sent such a beautiful girl to me. Long live the Marshal!" He tilde. Looking at the giggling Air, Nasha tilted her head in confusion. Her cute look made Air almost lose control and spurt nosebleeds. After coughing, Air finally remembered business. He jumped on the bow of the ship and said loudly with his hands on his waist, "I am Lieutenant Colonel Air of the Naval Headquarters. From today on, I will be your captain. Boys, let's go." Gagatilda. A flock of crows flew by, and the sailors on the ship looked at him blankly without any response. Air nodded silently and said in confusion, "Why are you looking at me? Let's go." Still Nasha couldn't stand it, so she stepped forward and whispered, "Lieutenant Colonel, you didn't say where your destination was, and your speech just now felt more like a pirate." "Haha, really? But this is all a trivial matter. Let's do it again. By the way, remember to shout after I finish speaking." "Yes, Captain. Do you understand?" Nasha scratched her head and looked back at the soldiers. Seeing that they all looked confused about the situation, she nodded helplessly in agreement. Air smiled, raised his hands and shouted again, "Young men, target Alabaster. Let's go." The sailors were very cooperative this time. Although it was not very neat, they still responded loudly, "Yes, Captain." "Very good." Very energetic. So after receiving the order, the sailors lowered the anchor and lowered the sail, and soon the warship left the port. Zephyr hid in a far corner, holding his forehead helplessly. This idiot really embarrasses Marine. Ain and Pins were also not far away silently seeing Air off. Pins, we have to work hard. We can't let Air get away too much. Ever since the warship left the Gate of Justice, Air had moved a chair and eagerly sat on the deck, waiting for the unknown enemy to arrive. Nasha came over with a stack of bounty orders, handed it to Air and said, "Lieutenant Colonel, this is a pirate who has been very active in the first half of the sea in recent months." Air took the reward order and looked at it curiously. "Butcher Kenki has a bounty of 43 million Baileys, regardless of life or death. Quick Gunnage of Akin has a bounty of 36 million Baileys, regardless of life or death. Green Eyes Kanchai has a bounty of 70 million Baileys, regardless of life or death." Flipping through the bounty notice, Air curled his lips and said, "What? They're just minor characters." "Forget it. Just catch whoever you meet." Chapter 24 Encounter with Pirates. Nasha was surprised when she heard Air's words, and she retorted loudly and seriously, "Lieutenant Colonel, please don't make such a joke. These guys are all famous pirates. It is very dangerous to encounter any one of them. Please consider the safety of the sailors and do not provoke them casually. If you encounter them, you must call for support immediately. After the nearby branch sends reinforcements, it is most reasonable to suppress them with firepower and sink them." After being lectured by Nasha, Air helplessly whispered comfort to calm her emotions. "Don't be so excited. I know how to deal with it. I graduated from Marine School after all." Nasha breathed a sigh of relief. This is the best. After saying that, she stepped on her high heels and went to do other things. Air put his head in his hands and leaned on the back of the chair to fall asleep, unable to take Nasha's words seriously. The two sailors on duty listened to their conversation. A veteran nudged his companion with his elbow and complained in a low voice, "It seems like this is another idiot who just graduated from the academy and doesn't know the heights of the sky." Another young man nodded and agreed, "Yeah, I really don't know why the headquarters sent us to this kid. He looks like he's not yet an adult." "Hey, I saw it secretly. His employment document states that he is only 13 years old." The young man was shocked and couldn't help but said, "What? You're only 13 years old?" The veteran quickly covered his mouth. "Idiot, keep your voice down." The two of them glanced at Air secretly and breathed a sigh of relief when they saw that he didn't respond. Taking the veteran's hand away, the young man couldn't help but worry, "No way, how powerful can such a small guy be? The Grand Line is so dangerous, we won't have any accidents." The veteran sighed and said helplessly, "What can we do? This is an order from above, and we cannot disobey it." Speaking of which, the two men sighed in unison. full of worries about the future of the group. What they didn't know was that Air listened to their conversation word for word. Air opened his eyes and looked at the sky speechlessly. When will a pirate show up to prove his strength? How can I establish my prestige if this continues? What he didn't know was that a pirate ship was heading towards him about 100 nautical miles away. A group of pirates were happily gathered outside a cage, pointing and discussing inside. This little girl is so cute. If she is auctioned off by somebody, she will be worth a lot of money. It's a shame to sell such a pretty girl. Laozi really wants to taste her. Ha, you idiot, if you dare to lay a finger on her, the captain will definitely kill you. TCH, I was just talking casually. While the pirates were busy discussing, a strong man nearly 4 meters tall walked up behind everyone and yelled loudly, "You bastards, what are you doing to my treasure? Get away now. If Marine continues to chase me, Laozi will throw you all into the sea." Seeing that the captain was unhappy, the pirate minions dispersed one after another. After everyone left, the strong man came to the cage and said to the little girl inside, "Hey, little girl, feed me quickly. You are my most important treasure. If you starve your body, I will feel bad." The little girl in the cage seemed to be afraid of him. After hearing his words, she immediately picked up the food placed aside and ate it in small bites. Ha, this is the right thing. When I get rid of Marine, I will sell you for a good price. The strong man laughed arrogantly and got up and left the place. The little girl ate the food and shed tears silently. "Dad, Mom, I'm so scared. Who can come and save me?" Air, who had been waiting for a long time without waiting for the pirates, had already fallen asleep in boredom on the chair. Just as he was having a sweet dream and playing with the young lady in his dream, a hurried shout woke him up. "Ship found on the left front. It's a pirate. Everyone on alert!" The lookout shouted at the bottom of his voice. These Marines are worthy of being the elite of the headquarters. They acted quickly as soon as they heard that there were pirates. Lieutenant Junior Grade Nasha commanded calmly, "Don't mess up. Get ready for bombardment." Did the lookout clearly see which pirate group it is? The lookout hand held a telescope and stared carefully. Only when the two sides got closer did he see clearly. "No, it's not good. It's the boxing pirates, and the captain is Fidari, the heavy boxer with a bounty of 88 million. Upon hearing that it was the boxing pirates, the Marines on the ship suddenly panicked. "Oops, it's Fidli. What should we do? Are we going to fight, or should we retreat first?" "No, our commander is just a young lieutenant colonel. If we fight, we will definitely lose." Looking at the panicked people, Air stood up silently. "Don't make a mess. We are Marines, just pirates. Please calm down." After hearing Air's scolding, everyone gradually calmed down. Air looked at Nasha again and asked her, "Do you have any information about them? Please tell me carefully." Chapter 25. Hello. Nasha hurriedly ran back to the cabin, and soon ran out with a small book. She flipped through a few pages and found the record of the boxing pirates, and introduced it to Air. The boxing pirates are captained by heavy puncher Fidari. He is characterized by great strength and is good at heavy punch combos. He once killed a lieutenant colonel of the headquarters with his 2 fists. He is an extremely dangerous guy. Vice Captain Quicker Leg Singer, with a bounty of 60 million Baileys, can kick hundreds of legs in 1 second, and the power of each leg can kick through steel plates. Besides, before she could finish speaking, Air interrupted her. "There's no need to introduce it in such detail, just say how many bounties they have in total." Manusha turned the page backwards, and after a little calculation, she replied, "Lieutenant Colonel, there are a total of 7 of them with bounties, and the total bounty is 249.5 million Bli. TSK. This bounty is quite a lot." Air joked with a smile. But Nasha was not in such a good mood. She asked Air eagerly, "Lieutenant Colonel, let's retreat first. This is not far from the headquarters. When reinforcements arrive, they will be dead." After Air took the telescope handed by one of his subordinates and observed it carefully, his expression suddenly became cold. "There are slaves on their ship, and these guys are still engaged in slave hunting. Give me the order to pull the ship over." "Nanny." Nasha looked horrified and quickly stopped her. "Don't be joking, Lieutenant Colonel. With our strength, going up will mean death. I can't carry out your order." Air looked at her coldly and said gloomily, "Lieutenant Junior Grade, execute the order." Nasha lowered her head, gritted her teeth, and went to convey the order unwillingly. Although the soldiers were reluctant, they still turned the rudder and chased the opponent honestly under the pressure of their commander. On the other side, on the boxing pirates' ship, the lookout also discovered traces of Air and others. Captain, oh no, Marine is chasing us." The pirates who were still eating meat and drinking immediately became chaotic after hearing the news. With a sullen expression, Fidli picked up one of his men who was running past him in a panic. "A cowardly guy has no right to stay on my ship." After saying this, Fidli threw the little guy dozens of meters away and fell into the sea. Ignoring the screams of his younger brothers, Fidli looked fiercely at the trembling younger brothers and pointed at the approaching warship road. "You losers, let me see it clearly. There is only one medium-sized warship on the opposite side, and the leader is definitely not a Marine general. As long as you rush up, with the iron fist of my heavy boxer Fidli, the guy on the opposite side will only die." Hearing the captain's encouragement, The boys shouted, returned to their posts and started heading straight towards air. The two sides approached quickly, and soon the distance was no more than 300 or 400 meters. The Marines adjusted the muscles of the ship's bow to prepare for bombardment, but were stopped by air. There are still hostages on board. Shelling is prohibited. But, Lieutenant Colonel, if we don't shell, the other party will rush over, an artilleryman said worriedly. Air did not explain. He carried Chendong to the bow of the ship and told Manisha, "I'll go over first, and you guys prepare to engage in a battle." After saying that, without waiting for Nasha to stop her, she walked straight towards the pirate ship on moonwalk. The pirate boy holding a telescope was startled when he saw Air walking through the air, and quickly reported to Fiddler Huey, "Captain, there's a guy flying over from the other side." "Idiot, what are you talking about?" Fiddler scolded, but he still looked up to the sky instinctively. Looking up, there was indeed a young Marine flying towards them with the air on his feet. Then, what is that? Is it demon fruit power? But before he could react, Air had already arrived on the ship. He stood at the bow of the ship, looking at the fierce pirates with swords, and greeted them with a smile. "Hey, hello to you trash on the sea." Fiddly shook his head to dispel the uneasiness in his heart, waved his hand and ordered, "It's just a kid. Kids, kill him." Dozens of minions swallowed their saliva and mustered up the courage to rush forward. Hey, you guys are really enthusiastic, so I have to respond." Easily dodging the chops of several minions, Air dodged to the left side of the crowd and kicked out with a powerful and heavy tempest kick. A 5 or 6 meter slashing wave swept across, and a dozen pirates screamed and were cut in half. Seeing this bloody scene, the pirates' legs became weak and they no longer dared to step forward. Even Air was a little unwell. "Damn it, I should have known I wouldn't have to use such force." Fortunately, after several years of training, his mental endurance has become much stronger, and it only took a few seconds for him to adapt. But at this time Fiddly had already rushed in front of him, raised his right hand high and waved it down heavily. "A kid is a kid. Punch Laozi." Air wanted to get out of the way, but for some reason he instinctively put his hands on his waist and used the illusion iron body.